You want to scroll into the first one?
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Nicely sent. Good job.
Yeah, I texted Eric, I don't know what to do that.
Could I borrow the old stand?
Yeah.
I just got a text from Eric, and he just said elevator, so I'm assuming that's where he is. Yeah.
It's not how you open. Oh. Okay, I was just asking, so I'll have you have camera, but I realized I can hide it. Okay, you know, we have one.
I think I have 3 St. Mark's tires on my person at all times. Woody Barnes was.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the dead one.
Is it you just not here?
Yeah, he went to Switzerland.
Oh,
Oh, word. Probably a better place than the Houston Marriott Westchase, so, you know, I don't blame him.
Yeah, being in the way of the door is not an intelligent decision right now.
You saved you the spot of honor.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the, old custom phase spot. Yeah, two rollers being down.
Yep, sounds about right.
Give me just a second to make the full, to copy my flow template and that should be good.
Yeah, I'll get whatever.
Josh, are you good?
I'm good whenever y'all are ready to go.
yep.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm good.
Advantage 1 inequality, domestic poverty, social MFA 33. The U.S. has economic progress inequality, DPG compressing to 0.36 dollar cap, 60% of the household remain lower than the top of the 50 years driven by equal distribution rather than slowdown low mobility from gas vehicle code and intensive recession, inequality, recession, losses, widening gap, cost of prices growing health and polarization, crying out about the act, becoming chronic malaise, the welfare state systematically traps the most vulnerable in poverty and insecurity. 2.22, party figures and inaccuracies with perfect update over 7% of apologies from America's policy work required. First, people don't help gain the bringing calculations required. Medical files prep, the fuels for certain preference, the timing during filing station, dislocation, encourage the work it doesn't problems, like CTC, retirement culture, CRP reduce, opting for better culture, USS, most complicated welfare state, automation, corruption cycles, and globalization, massive inequality inevitable, and corporate capture, the plan solves 2019, automation, globalization, limits, skills, workers, just with the person of hybrid research, 9% of jobs lost, 73 affecting motivation, every business feeling unemployment, feeling wages, made essential to job, creation, the economics, giving entry, automation, driving inequality, high 50 years, obstacle, cohesion, cooperation, critical societal functions, the present productivity, financials, the municipal decision, inequality, increasing corruption, governments, doing the background, cutting the taxes, milking industry, celebrating environment rights, social services, cycle over corruption, creates more equality, not only in the concluding elite threat prevail, social balance, reducing underwide, not slowing growth, also limiting education, human capital, equality, manufacturing, stability, of the populace addresses freedom, income, gets stronger reactions, automation, jeopardize growth, inequality itself is an existential risk, and amplifies all others. Asking number 21, warming up, pandemic, nuclear war attack, and all for WMD threats are going, and time gets shorter, research reveals threats trying to connect many head and hydra, risks for healthcare by inequalities, escalated and broke each block action, to address them, AI posted that global order, these include discipline, large-scale laws with dystopian possibilities, inequality causes loose means, biological, autonomous weapons, extinction, Camp 19, law of political equality, racial discrimination, oligarchy, centralization of power, this causes social distress, handicaps, ability to respond to ecological economic problems, inequality, undermined solidarity, turbulence faults, collapsive pressures, weapons ring, availability and breakdown, range from bio, agent to nukes, autonomous weapons with nukes, re-civilization from velocity, and collapse being existential extinction of our species. Thus, the plan, the United States government should provide a debt protected basic income in the United States. Advantage to is modeling current practice for small scale, large nationally sustainable basic income models, motion 15, advanced will of a BI, prolific worldwide loss consisting the program here, among governments of the world, copy that reflect the world is long-term large-scale BI, source, accepted nowhere near enough, large enough, gave nations hardly debating antecedents worth the look. The plan has poverty every year is equal 12, taking into account the last 70 Brazil, China, India, Pakistan, Africa, 70% of poverty, Russia, keeping model cells, dramatic impact universal poverty, have every year the best people randomized trials degree, basic income shares of every development indicator to talk 17, evidence for low income countries, suggests transfer that cause workers in essential consumption, 7, good trials, transfers, reviews, controls, studies, increases food, school, health, ag, savings, and ag, increases, cost is high, not recommended, not strong, UBI comes with offsetting costs, for without the transfer taxes, gross transfers offset UBI scale was, economics is small sums, and consumer impact developing countries, case for provide, UBI to combat poverty, developing countries is compelling, development is an impact filter, it counts existential wars, pandemics, and terrorism, 122, development is indicator tech parts supports, poverty, development benefits, future, reducing vulnerability, catastrophic risk, conflict, competitive countries, educated, participating institutions, improves governance, navigate existential risk challenges, reducing growth, instability, poverty, spread diseases, improve health, health and inmates, infirmities, populations, resilient to pandemics, poverty, causes instability, existential stability, research, and gender terrorism, and crime, unable to maintain law and order, future pandemics are inevitable, extinction, War 21, GCRs, systems, critical spread to the entire planet, failure to mitigate risk civilization, mitigation of loss, responding to resilience, high fatality, majority of DBEs, occurring and third, that's great nuclear war, AI, amplify biodiversity, increase speaking PPC, violator, only take one bioweapon, accident be catastrophic, in particular, India will also model, there's Latin interest was all 18, in this issue, GB, I've been supported by the economies, US attempts, and have been successful, the growth of cash transfers in India, such as possible, comfortable, using central the ID, spending, Indian court, order companies to deposit 10% of proceeds into a fund, Western countries propose GBI, it contains internal instability and refugee flows that trigger a new war with Pakistan, Cliff 20, disputes, and then lead to conflict, Pakistan, where economic conflict escalate, conflicts, internal conflict, affects security as a drag development, and care of British, they could slow down growth crises, these best governments due to revolutions, countries that undergo slow growth, experience conflict crisis, pursued a regime shift, let's go, refugees, not political offensive, violent escalation, tax escalation between Pakistan and India, possible, category of the of nukes. Now, finally, Solvency, the plan solves and its revenue positive, green wall 22, a growing plan of research shows inequality, research shows income, works in empirical evidence, so GA with people, every person amount of enough shows inequality, growth with crime, education, conservation with cost buildings, no studies show huge increase in revenue as well as savings, assistance, data show person find employment, no study found the expansion generated 10 times so much revenue as costs, all objections to basic income have been comprehensively refuted by empirical studies, in the career 20, objecting to empirical and practice observation, similar surveys, numerous studies, or research design with across the US resulting across dozens of refute country reports which ignore or assert without FDS, suggest the boost economics and multiplier effects, every city finds substantial improvements in UBI, with specific also indicates UBI works better than all welfare, the elimination of duplicative programs shields the link to the welfare trade-off, EA, also 19, welfare reforms not going to bring them no programs, services from competing BI schemes, complement, poverty, understood full substitute or replace contributor benefits directly, services, more entourage, or transfer cash flow programs and technical parts of welfare defer.
Along with debt prevention card and a new board and card.
Any excess trade-off will be financed by programs that have BXL's better points. 19 programs, no EITC, CDC, 10, SNAP disability, UICOS, non-trade expenditure, tax increase is good. Now, fiat is good. Policy proposals give debaters the knowledge and skills to challenge micro-political structures outside of rate. Economy 14, 13, role is moderation to disrupt authority. In the future, ignore justice, necessary larger state actions, legislation, students, explore, professional, nobody service, practices, compose anti questions, subjectivity, is been with the role performances, one professional lawyer things, better connections, just practice, cooperation, doctor, organized mental active experiments, be rostered, adventure by no rules, just perception, time horizon, experiments, and energy, enter the most nice round, between crash, shaky, perception, feelings to believe, more fun, and cash will confer, corporate manager, leaders, opportunity, official, become more alert, institutions, pressure to propel, the constituencies forward, debates over critical, fiat proposals, develop detailed advocacy and research skills, intervalley, has fast debate, change, debate 2K, debate, preparation, regular agency, capacity, to strategies, national research, competition, catalyst, provide in-depth understanding, without contact, guidance, topic, conditions, with research, Coalition in Africa, UN sanctions that Africa will debate provides a place for research to do. Research be out of open front doors makes it good Africa's advantage. Press sanctions, we're not engaged until we research with them too. Even without an African topic about to take action research, not just being inside the debate, research should support activism. Was used to rally in support of movements, research and reinforce alter opinions by discovering new people info. Question, there are subjects from the informed opinions for the students express concern tourism after research suited to give a strong potential relationship between debate research versus advocacy. Researching both sides argument advocates of debaters and both sides security defend against presentations against attack. Learning creation proposals help debaters strengthen their strands now. Inherently debates the plan is utopian. Theater debate is a detached game that encourages problem solving without commitment to one ethical standpoint. Playing Jenga doesn't require you to defend every architect or pursue woodworking, even if it does help you understand buildings. McGee 97. Debaters to understand the social grids, the social and practical qualities, free local policy making decisions. Now of us with growing criticism about a strict lead or official position critic as no prerequisite to policy by official by a monthly debate. But tonight the solution one need not influence the gender directly. Not discuss the US should do debates or judges for removed from Poland gender deliberation. Examples will not should showing fancy words. Deliberations of any drug instance. That should introduce instructions to meet an active science debate. Debaters use fiat should propose radical changes. About policy not being policy meant for useful or in social critics without suggestion debate is other than a game. Dead protections are key. Line 23 collectors. Sees the game as necessarily reviewed all the debate. They could establish strong pressure without reaction. Probably directly jeopardize. One of the features. They feel hard about billions of blowing from benefits in the dead protection. Necessary. Features disadvantage of harm and holy protection. Holding that without protection. In which is why I see game at all. Debating nuclear risk is good. Portal 17. Students not experience that race. Students born after Cold War majority. Understanding weapons that are not their international remedy. Program exists of the assumed public weapons inherited by the fact that he had knowledge of change and created non-weapons. Effect motivate hold leaders accountable so that research nuclear war next to useful preparation learning about nuclear weapons gonna be effective, inspire them, they dedicate themselves to solving problems. Those are those two parts.
Okay. Is it manifest or cross sector?
Yeah.
Also, I think Ishan accidentally said the wrong name. It's Bernstein 18.
Not Portal 7.
It was said. It's on the body, that's cool.
Yeah, give me a second.
Let me check if it's covered. I got it. I'm good. How much is the basic income?
Normal means of the plan would be 1,000 a month, 12K a year.
Okay, how do you know that's enough?
We've had plenty of evidence that talks about the old pilot programs and studies that say a 12K basic income would be enough to lift people out of poverty.
Okay.
Like we've read qualified evidence that says that.
Okay, sure. How is the basic income distributed?
Well, there's multiple ways. If you have digital bank accounts, it could be a direct deposit there. Otherwise, there's centers in rural areas that distribute cash that you can go to.
How do they like verify someone's not to get twice, stuff like that?
Someone didn't get it twice. Well, I mean, there will be stamps and like people
Like what do you
there's
stamp,
obvious
like on
checks.
their skin, like where do you see?
Not on their skin, like on their profile. Like what?
Like what profile?
Like in the SQUO, you know, the same way welfare is distributed in the SQUO with food stamps.
What if they
people
don't
only
have
get
a
ones.
profile?
What?
What if they don't have a profile?
What if they don't have a profile?
Yeah.
Like they're undocumented?
Sure.
Yeah, then there's no way for them for the basic income
Okay.
to reach that.
The Wong development scenario, what does development look like?
It's about socioeconomic development and social development. The argument is that when people are participating in the economies more, it develops that, and they could, participate in institutions better.
So development key to participate in institutions. How do you solve for structural diseases like HIV and AIDS as per development scenario?
Well, so the argument is that diseases are inevitable. We just have to mitigate against them. Or development internally say that a population that is more resilient is one that's more developed, and that makes it resilient to pandemics.
That makes sense. Debt protection, what does it mean?
It's like, let's say you desperately need your cash. In the SQUO, if you owe to a creditor, without debt protections, the creditor could seize your money. With debt protections, they can't.
Okay, what incentivizes them not to just take collateral?
Why?
Like, why can't they just take your car?
Well, cars are also debt protected.
Wait, so
It's like yes, like creditors will try their hardest to do whatever, but they wouldn't be able to. Or I mean, like also debt protections don't prevent people from paying their payments back as debt. They could if they want to. They just shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
It's like every piece of personal property is debt protected post-plan.
No. Cars are debt protected in the SQUO. Like this is just a fact.
okay, so like that was just a bad example. Well, okay, that's fine. India-Pakistan conflict is religious. what is like the interlink between whatever your modeling stuff was?
It's just in the squad, because of the lack of development, there's huge refugees flows that provides instability.
Wait, refugees from where to where?
Again, in the Kashmir hotspot from both sides moving to each other, and that provides instability.
Is that not because of religious conflicts?
Well, no, our evidence cites economic development as a reason.
Wait, no, it just talks about Goa and then it just talks about like an Indo-Pak war impact. I'm wondering like what Kashmir has to do with any of this.
Well, the parts that are slowdowns in economic growth is a reason for why these migration flows are occurring.
1 and 2 centering process. Good stage.
Yeah, go for it.
It's 1 off and then 20 damage 2.
Give me seconds, just loading and then be good.
Alright.
Alright.
Alright. Animals.
Yeah.
Alright.
Queerness is an abstract ontological phenomenon. Its deviance is the antithesis of personhood. The faux inclusiveness of civil society can only legitimate the system predicated upon queer exclusion. Prefer libidinal metrics over political economy. Redwood 23. Heterosexualism naturalized domination against people not upper cis class, het white men and people of position not quite fully human. Whose system must be violently police the people who police it. People keep safe from heterosexualist violence. The genocidal foundation upon the settler societies to build redistribution of violence, formalize what is implicit in patriarchal white sovereignty and fight for equality will not in patriarchal white sovereignty. Progress can only be ever adjusted internal inconsistencies, state sanction, transphobia considering how people invest in white sovereignty by demanding inclusion, disenfranchised groups, and position the regime that legitimate authority over themselves and lend disputes into a narrative that the settler society progresses into a more perfect and inclusive union and ends up equality ends up intensified segregation against concretizing under structural violence of active economy, spirit and feelings of desire, pleasure, fear, and repulsion, and will lead to trans queer people becoming libidinally invested in the empire. Those who wish to be accepted must be complicit in racialized violence, racialized, sexualized fears of crime, and violence into economic insecurity, push middle class white gays, less into state violence, inclusion, who good disturbing home and order. People is predicated upon the bad, undeserving criminal terrorists, and rightfully human whose studies must be society countered via explanation of racial systems. And the plan demands the fiat of a normative dream, naturalizing violence outside the scope of heteronormative relations. Corral 13. The state emphasis on interpolation of queer subject and political project frame the discussion regulated by federal government. The discourse of American identity scholarship programs says the unity of intention. State actors, one act in Congress, can end employment discrimination. One ruling could against laws on unmarried civil unions, domestic partnerships, and from no perspective, naturalize the state, but it's both assume universalist rationality. Positions move too quickly in the land of odds, celebrating the victory of equality of homonormativity, misses the point, fetishizing the state, obscures what's happening in the local macro sites. It's important to lead warnings against taking on concepts more real than practices that constitute them particular problems in relation to the social analyst reifies ideas. And the 1EC's project produces knowledge disembodied from essential excesses motivated by an affective attachment to normative saviorism. Voting AFF result in the exploitation of the exploited that affects political subjectivity. In here, Felder 19. Epistemological project calls into question modes of producing knowledge around black and brown bodies in relation to queerness and actually experiences of pornotropic image whiteness, grounds the discourse of sexuality, pornotropic people circulate high charge affective object position outside the normative sexuality, subject theories and acted by bodies and hunger for sensual access and materialization of temporality, instability, vulnerability, bar and joy, sounds oriented subset epistemological questions, central racialization, queerness, femininity, interpret strategy and acts of more than equality, inclusion, disrupt epistemological whiteness, sexuality, and the 1EC's economic speculation assimilates queerness for profit that produces a fungibility of black bodies that manufacture anti-queer and anti-black violence globally. Agatha Angelou 13. Clinton argues that certain nations can become democratic space by eradicating violence against gays. Countries like India are shifting towards decriminalizing sexuality, joining the U.S. on the right side. Materiality depends on neoliberal genes to reconstitute space. The shift has come with undiminished profit segregation, human shift the side of speculation, secure the U.S. dollar, sets of power assumption, sexual relations, restriction of fundamentalist values, and connecting sets of death, and race to reproduction and fungibility convert queer into packaging a good to be sold, while simultaneously requiring black bodies be infinitely penetrable commodification. The body depends on disfiguring value for someone setting slave as the limit and the sexist technology power to redistribute uncertainty and risk of the reproducible pattern capitalist future due to on the turn to capture black for future speculative economics. And Westwood's white heteronormative scholarship is used in anti-toxic discourse to pathologize trans unnatural being. Skip the Butler card. Affective attachments, ideal political expectations, the side of trans deliverance from economic precarity, culminating in future fatigue, the promissory narrative of future employment insurance and cash and frictionless time yokes, cruel optimism that wears us down. Malatino 19. What makes the future bleak is what makes it promising. Full options occurs them. That which you profoundly desire inhibits your flourishing. That when you imagine to deliver comfort, joy, wears you down thread. Attachment to it gets better after the messaging offer. Review insurance that one has life changes and discrimination improvements. That the things are better in a particular fit class by getting their promise and voice and inherits that a metamorphosis makes everyday life more bearable. The echo promissory narrative of transition, and I call it attention narratives only because I believe the other forms of support need to grapple with the being left behind and negative effects associated with the shape of most trans life doesn't mean the progressive teleological contours and ascendancy has been far from frictionless white non-white trans subjects who live in a comfortable transformative slim utopian in which the future is always better than the present side of promising deliverance. A period of duress that is rewarded with good feelings seems to be in the field receding even if such moments are possible. That doesn't erase prior years, the dissonance misgendering, nor does it transforming anxiety futural narratives and encourages hope for saviors. The politics of employment insurance replacement lack their future deferred economic considerations aside, like structural transition with an experienced dog misrecognition, transfer hostility at macro levels that produces fatigue, and the alternative is a career to cut of the one you see as a world-making event. The abject ontological condition of career life is one of social death-centered fun, and the negation of the career body. The only question of this debate is whether the one he sees political project presents a desirable object of world-making. In here, left 19. Queer utopia split the meaning of ideologically settled space into contested spaces, opening a new sense of queer freedom. These occupied space is not supposed to be your same space that predominantly heteronormative space of queerness. The queer utopia must operate differently through time and space, rejecting a monolithic approach towards fighting back. There cannot be, by definition, one giant cut that stops heteronormativity. Rather, cutting off each other hydra separately. The solution lies in the aftermath of these cuts. The creation of rural making queer utopic moments, established relationalities, African connection, a sense of intimacy that recognize a world in which queer people need to care for and care for each other. Relationality invites queer people to transform their space into a home, and it is in social death that we precipitates and bonds right agency outside that which cannot have agency. Queers the very starting point, just the invocation utopias can create positive change, positive space can take place at various universities, alleviate heteronormativity by inverting university space to create room for coherence, powerful intervention in the routine and queer will case bottom up, engagement with every day, the road to creating a rhizomatic process. Queer will making must be in the afterlife of queer utopic cut, inequality advantage. Wait, do you want me to read cool?
Yeah, sure.
Can you pull it up? 1. Debt protection can resolve predatory revenue schemes by civil society, which has a libidinal investment to police the black dollar. Nothing is stopping debt collectors from stealing your house or car because they know you have the UBI money. 2 is false legitimacy. UBI plays into a trick of time via the smoke screen of state legitimacy. Null is 21. UBI cannot address historical damage, discrimination, cumulative advantage. Universal policy cannot ameliorate loneliness, disparities along gender and racial lines, and by centuries of oppression, slavery, colonialism, race, gender-based exploitation. UBI cannot directly address the harm, death of material resources, and psychic and collectively marginalized groups, centuries of capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity, cisnormativity, not a panacea for social problems, to not address the dynamic and historical process of living in the shadows of dark histories of oppression, violence, Jim Crow, colorblind racism, and mass incarceration, redistribution alone cannot address white supremacy, patriarchy, and heteronormativity. 3rd, it exacerbates poverty by abolishing existing programs they don't get to fiat out of the streets. 19. UBI is a replacement for the current welfare state, eliminating most of the programs for people with lower and moderate incomes and universal payments, redistributing income upward that would increase poverty and inequality. 4. Double bind. Either it kills spending everywhere else, which causes more poverty, or it fails. Screen 19. 10 carrier costs more than 3/4 of the entire federal budget, 100% of tax revenue, 5,000 you provide 2/5 of the poverty line, what it would cost as much more as the federal budget could make. The UBI taxable savings would be honest about vast bulk, no federal income tax, new taxes impossible. We already need new revenues, keep social security, Medicaid, solvent, and avoid large benefit cuts to help repel crumbling infrastructure that always impede economic growth would require excessive taxation and exceeds in U.S. history that hard to imagine UBI would advance. Go back to the case. Their implementation of basic income expels career life to the margins by forcing a life clinging to bare minimums with any excess beyond that minimum labeled as theft and reabsorbed by lease. Thus, the affirmative is a pacifying fantasy that changes the location of the career subjects ever more dependent on the state while leaving indelible marks inscribed on vegan flesh that mystifies the structural apparatus constitutive of anti-career gratuity, causing careers under a system of maximum activity. Voting negative refuses the flinching compromise that forces careerness to undergo structural adjustment. Goldstein 21. Policy intensifies suffering rather than alleviate poverty. Welfare programs perpetuate poverty and create dependency. Cast empowers people suspect and responsible immoral policies, institutionalized conceptions of marriage and sexuality of the poor people and other family lives to be the cause of social policies that also the organized around sustaining poor people's misery. Any excess of bare survival is effectively sworn for accident, non-normative coalition building, essential for dismantling power and subjection to racialized sexuality and the deviant service of focal point in policy making politics. Non-utilitarian, non-normative coalition is key to contesting equitable racism against impoverished people. Send it out. Advantage 2. 1. Burnout effect takes out any impacted disease. Either the disease is too lethal and kills the host before transmission, or is too transmissive and not lethal, so it doesn't cause extinction. 2. If the impact is true, they don't give vaccines to poor countries, which forces them to develop or die, which either makes their impact inevitable since those countries will just spread their impact. 3rd, too many all causes to Indo-Pak war. The conflict is mainly religious and based on decades of tensions between India and Pakistan. There's no reason to the brink is now or why the UBI would stop it from happening. 4. Assertions of international follow-on and global modeling arrogantly assume the U.S. at the center of cosmos, which replaces accountability with moral glory and domestic extermination of countries that follow suit. Manual 23. Reconstitution of indigenous cosmologies is denying the expectation of Western modernity to change eras framed by conflictive coexistence, decoloniality, de-Westernization, re-Westernization. This infringes everything from climate change to pandemics, technology, finances, from industrialization to extractivism, the natural resource, art and literature, philosophy to sciences, multiplicity, Westernization, hand in personal genetology, and does not need to show the bend and toward re-emergencies and reconstitutions. Cut the Mignolo card at reconstitutions.
Could I get the card that you read on the page?
Yeah, I sent it a while back. Let me know when you get it.
Okay. Oh, Goldstein, that's it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, are you good for pass?
Yep.
Is the plan a good idea?
We don't think so.
Why?
We think the plan is
The
an
plan should
investment.
support its scholarship as a research project. We think that
Okay, wait.
makes it a bad
So,
idea.
as per the one and C, you've agreed that the material fiat consequences of the plan is a good idea, but that its scholarship is bad. Yes or no?
No.
No, because we've read case stuff.
Well, you read case defense, you haven't read
No,
case offense.
there's impacts, like the Neil evidence and the case. as
Also,
well.
the Goldstein evidence we just read explains how UBI re-entrenches poverty, which would be like a
Okay, sure, okay, so,
consequences
okay,
of the plan.
I see. I got the letter. Do we get to weigh the consequences of the plan?
We don't think so. We think debate should solely be about scholarship and epistemological understanding because,
Why?
well, the material consequences of the plan never actually happen. We all know the plan does not pass after
Yeah.
the judges vote AFF. We
Right.
think there's no benefit to debating the plan if we can never
Yeah,
actualize it. Rather,
So-
we should
so this-
interrogate
this sounds
our
a lot like-
epistemological orientation for the scholarship we read in debates.
So, I mean, this sounds a lot like defense. What is the reason we shouldn't debate about fiat consequences? Like, you got 3 1AC cards that said debating about fiat consequences good.
The
not
case
funding.
offense is the whatever you're gonna read the 2AC.
What?
Corral card also makes claims about how it causes career resentment and
Why
psychic
is it-
burnout.
Well, why does it do that?
Yeah, so it explains how, like, one act of Congress could end employment discrimination, one Supreme Court ruling could do this. The idea of the US legal system always could do something but never actually does it, causes career
Oh, so,
resentment
okay,
because it
okay.
causes career people
So
to
it's
make-
sort of a
make
pro
them-
hope, yeah. Okay. So about
Sure.
that, you just said a second ago that we all know that an AFF ballot will not
It's-
cause a plan to occur.
It's not
So
about
why
the
does-
plan specifically, it's about the possibility of future forgiveness.
Well, correct, and we all agree that
So
those won't occur, correct?
we don't think the plan will occur, but that does not mean that, like, no, we've
Yeah,
linked to
but-
broader futurity and state, like,
Okay, so why does that
institutional
link to
action.
us?
Because you've still invested in like state
We've
solutions.
invested in-
You've read like a ton of cards at the bottom of the 1AC why legal engagement is good, or like
No, we have not. None of those cards say legal engagement.
whatever,
is good.
like prefiguration good, like
Yes,
yeah,
those cards say prefiguration is good.
using
Okay.
the state. That
No,
is
it's
what
not
No, it
using the
does
state.
not.
What? None of our cards seem to become policymakers and go to Congress. All these cards about our local spheres.
okay.
The pornotroping link on the
Still
K.
is.
Why doesn't it link back? You've also used anti-queer violence to win the ballot.
Yeah, the pornotroping link is about pretending that like a ballot in here would solve violence out there, i.e.
Well,
there are
okay,
fiat
wait,
arguments
we
that say
we
that
just
trading
agreed-
fiated skills in here would lead us to advocate for social change out there. That gives you as people an affective like gratification thinking you've done something for queer bodies out there by constantly advocating for the plan. We haven't said give us a ballot because queer people are dying, rather we've already acknowledged
Where
that
have
they're
we
dead
said
as
we
per
do
ontology
something
and
for
social
people,
death
for
claims.
queer folk out there? Where have we said this?
Wait,
Anywhere.
what?
NEC.
But that's in-
This sounds, it
Okay,
sounds a
you
lot like-
yourself said that people go out and advocate for social change. You'll make arguments in the treaty about how the plan's good for queer people.
8, perhaps starting now. Stop that. 7:31 left.
It's an inequality advantage, modeling advantage, okay. Could I borrow y'all's stand? It's cool if I shorten the legs.
Sure.
No. Have to do the same effect every time.
I'm second to download it.
Do you want the timer?
Oh yeah,
Each one has their timer.
No, that is the timer.
No,
Oh,
we have two of
oh.
those
Yeah.
things.
I'll take it.
We just did bottom.
Inequality modeling critique.
Yep.
Give me one second.
I'm good, whatever.
Are you good?
Yep.
1 second, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Larger lists of drop impacts and equality enables mobilization to solve existential warming, pandemics, tech WD's 5 up to the laws that's ISCO and camp concession of the case indites every portion of terms case is solvency and internal links to absolute outterms case 1. Every piece of evidence agrees that solvency is absolute. That means that there's no other terms case arguments explained above. 2. Only basic income and mobilized movements to combat anti-career violence, otherwise structural economic factors will hold it back as 7. 1 and 1 debt protections just solve. Coppell does not understand what debt protections are. They're legally and jurisdictionally not allowed to see those things like cars, which is crossings, but they're not made worse by the plan either way. And 1 and 2, the knows evidence is about reparations and historical violence. We haven't attempted to solve those things. 1, 2, 3, and 4 no impact welfare because every quantitative and quality study of assets carry a basic income. It solves poverty by creating safety net for food, housing, and healthcare. Worst case, we eliminate duplication. That's 1 and C. That's what the 1 and C evidence. Independently, taxes also shield. It's made up later and is fiscally neutral. That's a Greenwell and Keeley evidence. How welfare is bad. It's subject to stigma and accessible and kills uptake. And poverty is unrepresented by the contact and Allison, which means and they have critique welfare on the K, which proves that it's ineffective and contradicts the K as a whole, which is Percon, which means that we can also have refs. Now, it does not kill spending elsewhere. Greenwell says that the taxes will bring in net more revenue. Now the modeling is where they've dropped the development impact, solved extinction from pandemics, instability, terrorism, and organized crime that's wrong in Impact War. Also goes quickly nuclear from domestic instability. 1 and C 1 over now. They don't assume malicious actors and states will engineer dangerous pandemics. That's void 2. 1 and C 2. Yes, we do not give vaccines to countries. The point is that they develop and raise an infrastructure and be able to develop vaccines and health response on their own. 1 and C 3. Economic development solves those all causes. Governments are rational and won't willingly trigger a nuclear war, but small border skirmishes will quickly spill over and go nuclear. 1 and C 4. We're not claiming that the U.S. is the center of the cosmos. The point is that developing countries will lose dependence on hegemonic states like the U.S. by being able to develop their own infrastructure and raise their own economy and generally diversify sectors within their economy, which proves the framework way that let us weigh the applicants the alternative. That means that they must have unique links to the representations, but we get to weigh the applicant. For 1 is class, 1 is construction to prove the plan is a good idea. Pivoting to unlimited questions with scholarship strips us of the ability to engage K to its fairness. And 1 is chance to generate offense only weighing the effects of the plan for its critical win condition. Prime to both, prime to the app and on. Usually choose the parts of the prime to the app and the alternate every instance of their effect. Floating fix of voting issue most of 1 is C. Enforces defense for infinite on critical product questions. Non-usually theoretic voting issue illogical because it doesn't disprove the resolution and snowballs into private act of fiat, which makes AFF impossible and spills over into the fiatic laws of physics. Now, fiat is good. 1 is experimentation, prefigured politics, encourages pragmatism and connecting factor theory, which is key to political calculation and actualizing change as Cooper. 2 is critical thinking. Criticism is not restricted to the technocratic elite. It's a prerequisite to any policy change that creates a budding social critics through boosting cognitive flexibility and conditioning ourselves to the real world. That's McGee 3's advocacy, examining and understanding the blueprints of policy enables persuasive ability to rally movements and achieve social change through refinement, imagination, and difficult preempt any claim about how we fiat the state. No evidence of fiat generates skills for the state. No evidence is talking about the state. You should hold the line. Now there are a few frames of the K proper. 1, fiat is pessimistic. Inherency means that we overwhelmingly agree that the plan won't happen in the real world, and the reading of the 1 and C will not do anything for queer people in the real world. That means that it's impossible for us to invest political hope that they claim to is extinction. Even if they win ontology, there are different textures of queerness even in an anti-queer world. Extinction is the most terminal form of violence that causes mass suffering from radiation and destroys the agency of the subject, which outweighs enters and impacts. Queer ontologies and critically disproven legal systems are contingent, necessary, and bent towards the progress, even advices are malleable as Taylor. Analogy. Transfer security shrink of stop across the levels of government identity, crimes of law, court ruling, discrimination, protection, to away from mind, protecting policing identity, building power, discrimination, housing, and accommodation achievements are astonishing. Secure victories against opinion, achievements that trans people mutable, minorities favor protections, believe trans people deserve same rights of opinion, same influence, provide opportunities. People are open for reservation, federal, structured by the rate of opportunities at different venues. They can talk from favorable venues. Backlash, weak conservative jurisdiction provides significant changes. Turn to criticization advice. Founded Title 7, protecting stereotyping and amendments, prohibitions, rule against rule punishment, and so prohibiting discrimination. Governance will be defensive block bills and virtue rights trans people use a PC to advocate for trans inclusive policy. The state is not a monolith, it's malleable and contingently mediated entity that has no one endpoint. That's Quran 22. There's not one state but many state actors, trans advocates, lobbies, federal agencies, trans includes policies, project regulations from schools, and children healthcare and prison order, bodies pendulum, things back to get policy, policies using the restaurant access in healthcare, because matter of great significance, these do not account for all contingency, control of the actors, subject to lower trans, personalities, strength of elected times, related to wrestling, changes of institutions and differences and structures of institutions of state different levels have their own effects. Queer ontology is not determinative, individual orientations towards transphobic are largely determined by moral transnationalism, religion and politics, socialization and media consumption, and gender. Jones and 19. Only three independent variables will relate to perception of trans people who are responding to subscribe to traditional moral values, responsibilities of youth, transgender people who consider cultivation theory and consider words related to perception. Response to health character and activity like support rights for transgender people, affording identification, ideology for significant application for support for transgender rights, values and moral traditionalism, egalitarian for identification, ideology, religious society, and psychological need for culture were significant predictors of support. Their combined impact is substantial. These values and characteristics help explain much of the public opinion on transgender rights. Monotroping link to partial empathy is inevitable and better than opting out, presenting a strategy to solve suffering. It's not voyeurism that scraps 12. Trauma is not an alibi for voyeuristic inclination. They cannot understand exploitation actions instead for critique of conditions. Trauma understandable with informative all the article to paint across especially less effective violence and whereas understanding that family acts research actions and catalysts for political activism to make visible the political rather than pathological attachment to lots of real life of the sexual affiliation precariousness introduces normative equality to address basic needs. They link back, they have read impacts and fungibilize black bodies and native bodies by reading impacts of the cave itself, which also proves Perfcon independently, which was explained above. Now we don't link economic speculation, we haven't made claims about the value of the dollar, which is what their evidence is talking about, rather the inverse by saying that life is more valuable than money, and proven by the plan giving money with no strings attached. And the Goldstein link is wrong. Their card is about welfare, not basic income. The impact turn that the Wednesday Cooper evidence explicitly says that welfare is bad and failing now, but the plan's universality solves the issues with stigmatization, inefficiency, and social control by giving it to everyone. Everybody gets it. Every time there's no issue with expense, it's not taken away from them once they reach a certain income level. Now the alt is bad. Queer utopic canonizes queer individuals, defining it as any anti-normativity, ensures cooperative. Queer becomes a despecified badge that straight progressives can wear for being outside the norm and distances from lived experiences, outside the category of LGBT and plus the term policy. 3. There's something suspicious about rapidity, which queer theory has been canonized and observed by heterosexual institutions around, so that's when gay studies never, which these theories prove to be continual, the liberal academics were separate the queer, and theories to prevail over the queer to these special last when gay, by trans, content acts like queer and turn into a generic virus of versus the trendy version of liberal, it is opposition to everyone comes to your has best interest in learning. She is the outcome of specific queer theory games the whole family can play. There's a signification to the queer as against the norms is no longer queer, since it commits itself to a particular association that reinforce binaries between those who enable embrace normalcy versus deviance, which maps bodies for power, ensures authenticity, testing trans debaters like Carrie, depend from parents of queer lawmakers like Monday George, who defend institutions are not queer enough, which reinforces violent normativity. That's followed 12. Queer was a term that child normalizing, same power to name, and sexual subject becoming a speaking identity that can be a contemporary identity to inherited subject, each not giving first. Bodies of the queer seen through subject queer limited because it's coming to the queer heteronormative binary adversity by and the cycle of significance to represent subject of fixed planet bodies are either reinstituted and be determined by significance or represented through new representations. Progress is there's also contingencies or litany of acts of Matthew versus Shepard and James Byrd, hate crimes prevention act, Bossack versus Clayton County, that's 2020, and the equal access rule all prove.
Good for cross.
Let me get water.
High enough, I think it was huge.
Okay. First on case, you said something about Perfcon. What was the warrant?
Yeah, the warrant is that you said on the criminal evidence that removing welfare is bad, but then on the K, you read a K of welfare. That's clearly a contradiction and proves that you're not consistent with your reps, and we think that should be reciprocal with us.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. On the K, your Jones evidence says people who hold, quote, traditional moral values and egalitarian ideals are less likely to be transphobic. What are these traditional moral values and egalitarian ideals?
Well, causing violence to people is bad, being inclusive is good. Those are traditional values. It doesn't mean traditional values in like the way you're thinking of and the way you're gonna say in the blog, which is like, the nuclear family, traditional values. None of that. It's talking about like basic examples of what people value are bad. Those things will be universally applied.
How does the plan make people like more moral or like
It is
adopt
not.
these values? It
We're
is
not
not. So how is this offense for you?
it's an indicted to your thesis of ontology that you've made. That's what it's.
Okay, so your evidence is people could be nice if they felt like it. How's that?
It's not could be nice because it felt like it, but their the values that they believe are important
So you'll
apply
defend that
to
everybody
being.
has these traditional
inclusive.
moral values.
Not everybody does, but the point is that it's possible.
It's
Like you've made a
possible.
claim that
That's
it's impossible for progress for progress
yeah,
for
I got
trans
it.
people. It obviously indicts by stating that it is possible in some instances,
Yeah.
even if it's not
Okay.
happening right now at the
I
degree
got
that you have
it.
said.
The craps evidence. Can you explain how it answers pornotropin?
Well, yeah, it says that even if we present things like traumatic scenarios or extinction scenarios in general, it says that despite saying those things, it's not just using it as a tool for voyeurism, as you've said, but rather it's a mobilizing tool that gives people
Okay.
a personal attachment to these
Mobilizing
violence.
tool and personal attachment. How?
Because when people see something traumatic, they want to act on it. That's pretty logical when you
It's
see
also
the.
like,
Do you have any like
dramatic
causal
behavior,
examples of debaters reading like extinction scenarios, then going out and like stopping extinction?
Well, I mean, like,
So-
it's actually true. Well, I mean, not stopping extinction. Hello. Though, one you see big evidence says people like protested genital mutilation in Africa and then protested Iran sanctions
Okay.
through debate.
Your
and other
dip big
agencies.
evidence does not talk about fiat at all. It just says
Yes, it
research.
is.
It is
The
literally a
entire
debate
part.
club.
Okay, I'm gonna re-highlight this in the one in our.
Feel free,
Yeah,
bro.
you're gonna lose
Feel
the
free.
highlighting.
The reasons to reject the team, what were they?
It's non-UFG fiat, floating pigs, and
Wait, what was the first one?
non-USFG fiat
Oh,
and
okay.
floating pigs. And I guess private actor fiat is a warrant on that.
Sure. Halperin 3, like, how does this answer the alt? It just says like subversiveness is bad or something?
I mean, that's what the alternative is, right? It is subverting norms. We think that that is bad. It's given by.
Like combating norms is bad. That's the
No. It is that combating norms through this lens of using queerness as a badge. That is bad.
Okay, what should we do instead?
I mean, what do you mean? It's like a DA to the audit. We should go AF to stop extinction. Like,
Okay,
I
sure.
don't know.
Studying that.
It's right to wrap up, just saying.
No, it's
Alright, I'm middle judge now.
should be said.
Wait, did you take prep or not?
No.
How's the police chair? How's the police chair feel?
I feel powerful.
Is it just okay?
Frameworks in
Overview.
the one in our, so show the separate sheet.
Overview, yes, no.
Yes.
Word.
Wait, what did you say?
Wait.
Frameworks in the
one.
Oh, okay.
Do you say something other than overview?
No, I was just asking overview, yes, no.
Frameworks in the water model?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it just moves the linear order. Like, I don't know if I should do 2 and C first or framework. I'm good.
Time.
Queerness should be thrust as objects ontological data being for reasons. One is overkill, so our society seeks to push queerness out of time itself by obliterating queer flesh and object, not subject, which is why no rational explanation exists for why the queer body shot hundreds of times even after a subject would reach biological death. Two is maturity, lack of family time, and generational kinship. It was a child in contradiction with queer being that its nerves agency, heteronormative world, and repealed to make the fiat and future generation structure bond, and an absolute negation of queer bodies. Three is absolving heteronormativity, even if contingency is true, we should elevate heteronormativity to prevent white and heteronormative pacification information, anything else allows for normativity to claim the terms they cause are not that bad, which is a bad motive to be forced libidinality, normative society structured upon the negation according to this person libidinal, fear of queer deviancy is dangerous, and a sexual repulsion to non-normativity to warrants this gratuitous response as Robinson, and to include hard incarceration practice heterosexual dominant gender queer people, 3 times more likely incarceration police reveals, police use the discussion of gender regularly genders criminalizing prosecutors poor queer people as deviant criminals that pedophile firing gay people because sexuality more planning the gay people that pose a threat to national security squads rape gay bathhouses same-sex liaisons etc. arrest cross-dressing laws criminalize clothing of the opposite gender rights benefit people who assimilate into heteronormative institutional relations focus on rights mass criminalization poverty homelessness violence on heterosexual violence engage in greater illegal behaviors experience more punishment gender expensive women of color face the worst punishment being different sociological basis should come before there are more sessions that demand control subjugation on the guise inclusion that's culture to a heteromale dominant paradigm provoke controls the intersection heteronormativity clinical treatment acknowledge traumas inflicted heteronormativity societal structure reinforce the role of the oppressor becomes internalized gay minds become square exists to reduce what is even from the baseline existing heterosexual paradigm influence normalization internalized homophobia and homophobia will inside exists inside everyone now 2C1 was framework it will be in the 1 or 2C2 group all the permutation they say the same thing anyways 2 answers 1 etc it's out of contingency to add and intrinsic to add queer war making to their human scholarship those are both voters for next intellectual responsibility 2 links all dissets they'll do the queer parasitism link here consequent and also the non-existent but desirable world of US physical policy attribute to United heteronormative states moral qualities yet to be demonstrated even if the plan has possible benefits add to enhancing congressional gridlock and focus on Ukraine and Israel proves there's barriers to the plan ever actualizing in the real world Westwood because it's hypothetical full knowledge advantage cannot be solved repetition compulsion turns the case they feed our addiction water temporality the recasting possibilities driving surplus pleasures which is a direct answer to every we do not believe in the plan or inherency means the plan will never actually happen because it's about the repetition of that 2C2 the voters not 1 not a floating pig 2 not fiat we don't fiat institutions at all now 2C 4 and 5 the Cooper and McGee evidence 1 aspect of vampirism sibling crossplay answers McGee 2nd Cooper will be instant in the 1 and R and commitment to planning hypothetical futures embodies eroticization of the trans black body porn tripping performs ritualized murder over and over again as the subject reduced to flash as Mac in 23 Transist is 1 insertionally perceptible and opaque social movements with which are settler subjects and system to recognize transist interplay into relational domination theories of democracy emphasize citizen emancipated subject ignore how racialization desubjectify black bodies and deny the max important tripping repetition of technology that reduces black bodies to reflex flash appreciates the body black bodies subjectified for viewing pleasure through mediations black suffering as a human subject murder over and over again which logics porn tripping mobiles black land now all answer the performative contradiction between porn tripping it's not performative contradiction our argument is that fiat over imagining the suffering out there and the basking in the joy of helping those people out there is building to porn tripping not just reading a critique or talking about death now the next argument was they preempted inherency proves the plan that was inserted above on the speculative vampirism link, but it'll also be down below. Now they said that they call it the extinction outweighs. I'll answer here. Group their evidence on the extinction outweighs 1 is a temporal blackmail 2 warrants a temporal blackmail spectacular large scale threats obscures urgency body suffering now urgency must be constantly deferred until eventually race and legitimate concerns repeat tropes of extinction outweighs the race the maximum suffering body to impact calculus B as about proximity voting negative draws attention to those suffering now insisting they cannot wait any longer proximity always max use the only factor about to resolve 2 is the egocentrism and this the Chen and to lack empathy equals the interest you turn results is just empathy equals against you turn decision you turn into the opposite egocentric attitude lack of concern humanity you turn participant should take for empathetic concern for independent empathy and measure negative emotion anger correlate possibly you turn judgment and 3 detachment is head growth and I think to become something that culture to have fashion for real trashing part of the game language and political measure consequently when I change world can change our committee next the next argument was the state is not a monolith it's a negative argument they have made a sweeping the solution saying that one act in Congress could change all life within the queer people, which obfuscates a structural condition that queerness goes through, and imagines that the paycheck can somehow just save all the structural violence that happens against them. It's queer ontology not true. 1, yes, the liberal economy arguments would completely concede that this card does not talk about libidinality at all and does not assume the mass incarceration disproportionately of queer people. 2nd is the neurological studies that's where the press evidence was extended above. 3rd is that it's too deeply entrenched today. I said it's because of religious studies. Even if that is true, the cultural impositions have been around for millennia, which means that it's too deeply entrenched for them to reform it using monetary methods of resolution. 4, they don't get to read any new cycle cards because the 2C did not have any now partial and pretty good traps was answered above. They said we link back to the fungibility bodies also answered above. On porn shopping now they said we make they make life more very valuable by giving them money. This is the exact problem, the idea that structural condition can be resolved by the same oppressors gives into way of pacification, which will be down below on the link debate. Now the next argument they made was welfare's bad but the world gets better. This is exactly our link argument that they have a gut check instinct to just say the world will get better every 20 seconds of their 2AC, which proves that the repetition of theater debates over prefiguration causes them to believe in the contingency. It's not necessarily that they don't believe in the plan specifically, but about how they have a broader attachment to the paradigm of legal institutions that Halpern evidence. I'll answer it here. I'll do the alternative here. You should refuse the one he sees anti-queer political project instead embrace queerness through a queer utopia cut of the one see that generous space in place necessary to convert normative epistemological practices places how seen queerness they've conceded uniqueness arguments about queer life exists when the political train queerness has been trapped as static deviant other that civil society moves in opposition to voting not asked also links it clears the ground for true activity by refusing the queerphobic hermeneutics and scholarship of the one see you can change the state, but can change the state debate that's taught that 21 fighters of other comes before church and experience normal temporalities that exhaustion and distance of time one way waits for condition improve as subject action others accept action expressing exhaustion linear consumption experience helpful future need to make all those adoption and both become a whole lot more than carry entire characteristics like about fatigue weakness not awareness being drained and connects the because democracy constitution filters the horizontal versus static exhaustion has been antithetical action rendering the possible or nature responsibility presence where the thesis of theory and see that prefer bloom into the transgender individuals face obstacles that take out to all brain body leading to cause it and that the 80% preventable queer adults face unique structures of provisional systems being on the causes can for the next side cause the coronal all levels of stress which can lead to long-term cardiovascular issues stress and chronic inflammation richer blood pressure and stress. Now the next argument goes that trans inhibitors do not support the plan or the state are not authentic. Now that is just wrong. Our argument is about indoctrination, which will be down below in the link debate. Now they said the hate crimes act author Matthew Shepard inverted hate crimes attack didn't stop and queer hate to be ambiguous when courts don't know what a hate crime is. Stephen Fenner still died and was brutally mutilated with almost zero punishment to his oppression, rollbacks and queer policies and don't say gay bans prove it's not by individual forms with the broader system that always rolls back. Now the spade evidence or I'll do the similar queer assimilation link here. They completely mishandled it. There's two parts. One is pinkwashing Westwood's basic income legitimizes this institution thereby pacifying queer freedom with the system is captive heteronormativity every time they say basic income helps queer people. They're making our link argument for us. They psychologically drive queer people to be nourished and maintained while simultaneously held captive civil society clinging to their lives by living basic income check to basic income check dependent on their oppressor. Star this next part of the flow. This is proven by Ishan Singh and Krosnick that they do studies that just replicate the same effect that old pilot programs have. It's nothing radical when corporations can just increase the prices of basic consumer goods given increased spending capacity. Goldstein says that escalating fines, debt, and corrupt regimes keep transfolk in a perpetual state of poverty because a libidinal disgust of queer joy civil society steals any life that is in excess of that bare minimum, which is proven by what he sees Shaw's joke when they say quote it's criminal what they do is people's money unquote too is indoctrination. The one he see is another heteronormative experiment that attempts to sway queer folk into upgrading the oppressive system. Queer people must make a decision to come out of the closet to receive basic income from centers and system because Westwood thinks makes it living hell to get a literal stipend. You think Zuckerberg, Elon, Bill Gates support basic income to make poor people and queer people feel better? No, they advocate for it because it pacifies any revolutionary resistance against the system by forcing them to be content with minor injustices that they face.
That'll be in the lineup.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Alright, let's talk about the bottom, the last argument. How do people having to go to welfare centers and getting deposited in the bank account cause them to come out?
Yeah, so you said that like they have to engage in bank accounts with rural centers that distribute the money. That obviously requires documentation.
Okay, but they can just not report their sexuality, correct?
No, because in rural centers, first of all, they have to like stuff like social security and current welfare programs. There is a name attached to trans individuals that cannot be abolished through just like a basic income program.
This sounds like an issue with the
Yeah, this is you said it cannot be abolished.
You're like both
It
sides.
sounds like a
It's
legal
a
omission.
terminal defense argument that says that
What?
you've not grappled with the structural condition of queerness, which means you're moved to
So
try
okay,
to
so
solve
link of omission. We
throwing
didn't solve
money
all
at
the
them
problems
is not
with the
the
world.
Wait, I didn't get that. What's
So it's a link of omission that we didn't solve all the problems with queer people in the world.
well, yeah, sure. That's right. That's terminal defense.
Sure. Let's talk about the thing right before the all. What does it do for queer folk?
Yeah, we think that it's about our presence within debate itself, the judges' ballots.
And that materially changes the conditions for queer folk. Is that your claim?
Sure. That can be
Really?
one of
The ballot will change material conditions. Your argument is that voting negative
Yeah, sure.
will solve queer
That's
violence.
one of the things. We can
How?
Yeah.
How?
Sure.
How?
So, okay.
What, what's your answer now?
Okay. Let me pause. Okay. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, it changes mature conditions. Our lab evidence says that it switches heteronormative spaces into spaces housing queerness. Heteronormativity requires the re-instantiation of normativity to reinforce itself, which means every instance of queer performative rupturing, i.e. the ballot in this debate,
Okay, and
can
that stops
deconstruct that
queer
normativity.
folk from getting shot 30 times in the street.
We think that those are based on libidinal
Okay,
drives.
wait,
We
pause.
think those
You don't
libidinal
think,
drives-
okay, who has made the out of world claim here? Us who have said that the plan will not happen in the real world, and you saying that voting negative will solve queer material violence. Explain.
What is outer world?
Okay, you have critiqued us claiming that we will spill over to the real world, correct?
No, okay, so
That is
it's about the
that's what
internally
process is
between
what you
the
said,
ballot and the like. It's about the ballot.
It's about the ballot. What does that mean?
Well, you said outer world claims, like you're trying to get us into saying that we don't solve for violence out there. We're saying it's about what's most proximate to the ballot.
It's about
Yeah,
the
our
ballot.
argument is that voting negative
Okay, and the
interrupts the
ballot will
reification of normativity here in
Queer
debate,
folk from
which
getting
changes the way we engage with
Okay, let's talk about the
epistemology.
point.
It's not just about queer people being shot. Just because you're not being shot does not
Okay,
mean queer
okay,
people are
that's
not
fine.
being oppressed.
The detachment DA. Okay, actually no. The egocentrism DA. How are we utilitarian?
Yeah, you said extinction outweighs.
Okay,
maximizing over
extinction
lives.
outweighs in any ethical paradigm. Why do we have to be utilitarian?
Because you said maximizing life saved. Like even
Where
if
have
you're
we
not,
said-
even if
where
you say
have
that,
we said
even if you try to
maximizing
pull
life
things out of its cheekily or
It's
whatever.
about utility. Maximizing lives saved is also not utilitarianism. You're just killing random stuff.
Sending it out. Order will be decay, then framework.
Isn't it at the bottom of the case file?
Yeah, wherever Trichet left though. Sorry, I didn't looking for the. Okay, it's sent.
Is it just framework?
Yeah.
Bottom of the cave and cave.
Is it just framework?
Yeah. If I have time, I'll go to case, but I really doubt it.
Alright, give me a second. Open that.
Give me a sec, yeah.
Oh, let me just put it there.
I'm just starting off on like the Feldman link where Trichet left us.
Okay.
The what?
Like the Feldman evidence there.
Yeah, sure.
Oh wait.
The queer simulation.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
Where is it? Wait, okay, so does
Where
it
is
start on
simulation?
framework or does it start somewhere else?
Starts on the
Or the
case.
twins.
Bottom of the
Oh,
cave,
okay.
proper event.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're good.
I'm good.
I will quote their evidence. Subpoint A, 1AC Wong says, quote, when weak governments fail to improve people's lives, their legitimacy suffers, unquote. Government legitimacy is then used to indoctrinate people to analyze problems within queer focus, problems with broader queer phobic institutions. That's the 1AC Redwood evidence. Wong frames that governments get stronger when citizens go through, quote, nationalist curriculums, unquote. Their people need to get better educated and thus better placed to participate in institutions, unquote, which indoctrinates queer people to reinvest in state and future that never comes. This is impacted out later in the card when Wong says, quote, weak states often engender terrorism and crime because they are unable to maintain law and order in their territories, unquote. What Wong deceptively frames as crime and terrorism are the white depictions of queer life and Palestinian protesters cast as terrorists. This is proven by the 1AC Carrier 20 evidence that says, fuck you and your objections to the basic income, you're getting it away. There's three impacts. One is zero policy failure. Turns case absent analyzing queer phobia as the cohering violence that results in them eliminating black and brown land and families and victim blaming and killing them. Two is workability, similar to plantations where actually skip that, I'll go to framework. Counterinterpretation, the one he sees an object is studied in the world negative should be the truth of the scholarship produced by the object intrinsic to plan advantages and solvency. And no, the first impact was fairness. Our impact outweighs it teaches students to interpret the world in a way that's ethical. Fairness is internal link. The only impact of debate is what we learn. There's zero impact of fairness if it's within a competition used to train students into queer phobia. Two, it's inevitable. Speed, resource differences, thumb, game implosion. Third is pathology decide. Moving the one he sees is good. It holds them accountable for heteronormative models of debate. Anything else teaches them that there's loopholes out of queer phobic discourse. Weighing overall consequences of the plan enables microaggressions felt in here. Four is reasonability. They get after speech first and last and infinite prep to adapt to queer scholarship. Five, risk of the link justifies the procedural violation in the face of scholarship rooted in heteronormativity. Six, no fairness paradox. Judges vote down teams with perfect technical execution if they're homophobic. The truth, ethicality comes before fairness. 7, ask yourself, who's their fair model of debate fair for? War. 11, students underestimate structural portions of racial disparities when opportunities again with students from relatively privileged backgrounds creates a temporary bout of unfairness. The game creates opportunity to change perspective. The game is often creative, offer chance for privileged students experience unfairness, relative fairness. Assumes the world's a fair, they experience a good player, losing unfair game because the cognitive dissonance. That is our teaching moment. And instrumentalism decided to it is game where the players are the only thing that matters. Then their model propagates an over-identified reflection of the self that represent generous on passive political nihilism. Its ultimate voter, Antonio 95. Persons over-identified with the position engage in gross fabrication to obtain advancement they are so absorbed in, simulating in fact the lower players, the rotation of socially appropriate mass reduces person to hypostatus, simulacra simulation is so pervasive that it's hard as hell copy from genuine article obvious. Attitudes contribute to the role attainment, deadly combination of desperate, conforming and occupied space for new types of tyrant. Next, backwards clash. 1, it's an inevitable process counterplans, and hidden a spec under your internship shifts away from plan focus. 2, concept matters. Link controls the terminal direction of clash. If we win our model of debate is better, then you should reject arguments about one ballot won't solve our individual rounds. This one round may seem meaningless, but the legacy debate proves it has an impact. If you ask people from 2004 if the activity would reach record numbers of black participation, they would have said no because it seemed impossible at the time, but the reason why it's not the case 20 years later is because judges made transformative decisions in rounds. They were told their individual ballots don't matter. Third is plan focus is worse. You want to see more by only weighing the 8-second advocacy text rather than the whole 8 minutes. 4, act choice solves. Recording your evidence and impact turning into debates. Over scholarship are better than stagnant extinction outweighs the debates. 5, the worst. They allow utopian knowledge to outweigh structural impacts, which makes them OP and kills critical clash. Now, next is the spectator. Actually, they said fiat is good. Wrong. No, spectator politics is a repetition of simulated advocacy resigns debaters in action, turning politics into spectator sports makes atrocities inevitable. Mitchell 98. Fiat affords debaters an assumption that specified agent will carry out the plan. Structural separation is still a spectator mentality after real simulation that carries out a few future responsibilities, ethics, and detachment, introduces a politically regressive dynamic. They said fiat is pessimistic. This is a double turn with their open evidence, which says fiat is good because it's optimistic and inspires action, no matter whether it's legal or social, which means that they obviously think fiat has some benefit. So all of our critiques links. Next, they said div big evidence. I'm gonna quote their evidence. It's mistagged. None of their card is about why fiat led to people feeling empowered. Just that research is good, which our model solves better by weighing scholarship. It also cites our own Mitchell evidence I read above, which says fiat is bad for empowerment. We read green. Want to see div big? 2K. Mitchell examination, pedagogical implication for debate. Mitchell contends laboratory style creates spirits, a sense of detachment, and sees research suspected, research and shoots, conducted for competitions, major catalysts. And it also concedes that debate shapes subjectivity. No takebacks. When you see div 2K. Even if students are not compelled to take direct action, research still changes opinions and attitudes. Research can, process can also reinforce or alter opinions, discovering new information in research process can question their current assumptions. Now, more on subjectivity here. Your ballot matters. 3 warrants. A is science. Repetition compulsions neurologically verified and comes before all of their self-serving and non-falsifiable assertions about all causes. Ingram 13. Words and symbols become deeply entrenched through repetition. Memory takes over and bypasses reason and critical thought, influences political memory. Notes associated with subject or activist subconscious determines when the conscious mind is available. Satisfying brain is not how with repeated exposure mindless and brain industry constitute automatically screen alternative modes of machining process of the brain and body. Drive the majority of political behavior. Brain becomes addicted to mindlessness and addiction deepens the ability to willingness to be talked out. Compulsive behavior declines. All addiction surges established by hunger for dopamine substances, emotional, political rhetoric. The craving be satisfied by increasing the hyperbolic expressions. B deterrence competitive incentive influence what we defend magnified by the prep we do for tournaments. C, it's not a yes no question framing. It has such green lights teams to get away with queerphobic discourse in debate because, quote, debaters don't believe in their arguments or doesn't shape subjectivity. That's an independent reason to vote negative in a tiebreaker. Even if the ballot changes nothing, acting like it does ensures we hold ourselves to higher standards of ethical engagement. Next is the ratio decide. It's the corroborance in the 1 and C. Their compulsion for governmental actions, the only scope of imagining violence normalizes violence against queer focus outside the frame of legitimate discourse. It shifts the frame of violence to only recognize pain inflicted upon cis heteronormative bodies.
731. Perhaps from now. What was the last argument?
Corra evidence erasure dissent.
What was the arg?
It's like their compulsion for governmental action means that violence against cis heteronormative people gets like
It's the
prioritized.
frame of violence that you say is legitimate, only includes people of heteronormative violence.
Trust you, I'll take that up. Just need to go to the restroom real quick.
158 left. I'm sending one card. I'm giving one. The card is sent.
You said 158.
I'll use the rest. The order is just tricky. I'm gonna use the rest. Sorry.
I assume prep ended.
Yeah, 158.
Students seem to have embedded answers to the TFA thing, it's not actually controlled by their process. You know, it's with the neuroscience. But I think if the students are having it, like built-in answers to that, so that the two of them are kind of Like that is like a top like 10% of teams thing, but
No, we won't be answering that first. Yeah, hopefully it's in here somehow.
Order is just the K.
Framework at the top or?
Framework at the top, yeah.
Okay.
It's framework at the top, then the 2 and C top down.
This is item 3. Okay. Framework pay proper, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm ready to go whenever y'all are.
We're good.
Framework with the plan versus uniqueness and a capital awareness, the impact is slash the resolution burdens the AFF, we adjust the plan, they move that towards unpredictable requirements, slash robustly define our positions and create better advocates, runs for offense, not going for fairness, but on the relevant defense. And fair prep only matters if it's about the consequence of the land winning link, there's not just for procedure violation, because it wasn't predictable. The warrant evidence debaters internalized losses as a technical failure and feel cheated, not reflexive. Their evidence about monopoly, which solves better cuts with ways. Coppell is also privileged, and they read this critique to win this debate. It's also unworkable to assess fairness based on race. It runs debate into impressional impact. Now, presume for rejecting better equity means you cannot determine the veracity, the strength of decay without first determining whether or not we should be prepared to debate it. Now, the Antonio evidence. No link, we don't think that pretending to be a state is good. Just the words USFG and fiscal redistribution provides a balance. States this point. There's a scope question. Antonio describes the larger process of debate. That wrong Golgop states it. Individual living or common ethos one with regards to because nature was going to be society where not through authenticating all weekend points of society where other was the norm. But he is not in this now clashes on inevitable. Their interpretation would say that the arguments they listed were resolution based, so they're predictable. We'll concede subjectivity for mission class also the long term through iteration proven by Malthus. The 8-second statement of the plan described that its consequences are about fiat utopian alternatives are good. If not, they can be excluded on theory. Now, no repetition compulsion. The Ingram is writing about politics like forming a negative association with the word Republican. Fiat turns out it criticizes the state and repetitively trains us to pose solutions to entrenched problems. They also link the repetitively perform the alternative without ever actualizing political transformation. And the ontology debate proves that racial practice empirically and scientifically backed. Counter advice breaks down over time and is shaped by institutional change that reverses negative association. Pause time.
I think I have 3:30 left. I start the timer at 8 minutes. I'm gonna make it 3:30. Alright, everyone good?
Fiat is good in virtuous pragmatism through experimentation and bolsters critical thinking by making us social critics who can apply movements and achieve change. When we leave debate, the big recuts is that predictable debates are good, not just research. Our evidence also does not say Fiat is optimistic. It says that Fiat is pessimistic since we know debate is game, but we can use it for optimistic futures versus social critics, which is not linked to 38, the Mitchell evidence. No speculative politics. Fiat is not required to believe in the state. It's just a normative judgment. That's key to all the positive politics and agency. Cost-benefit analysis teaches us what to advocate for and train students to confront real-world opposition. The alternative sees the academy and means that we never act outside of our social education, which creates ethical localism. And they also see the theorization to the right, which for offense, no erasure. They can read case of our representations as long as they're unique and we get to the plan. Obviously, interpretation excludes their analytical violence, includes their analytical violence ontology. Don't elevate their theory of proven false that provides false strategies that is worse for creative debaters. Even if they went ontology, there are different textures of violence. Extinction is the most common form of all violence. Causes mass suffering from radiation, which destroys the subject. Now, pre-ontology is simply disproven the CRA and other parties has had a record based PR saying that violence hasn't happened. Just that there's potential for improvement. While the community is also mutable and hasn't changed their opinions. That failure state is not monolith. It's in like it proves that there's no one else to try to state action. The Jones evidence is a study that shows that people have potential to change in their minds on transfer, which changes their neurophysiology argument. The Kessler evidence is about neurologies and the study. It should be George 50 scratch off your flow. Now, no repetition compulsion link was answered above on framework. No corner tripping or speculative emphasis link. The plan does not represent individual suffering, rather it lays out the political stakes of nuclear war. It links to them way harder. Their evidence is anti-core violence and incredibly more detailed than our evidence of race and voyeurism. Rather, it's a way to have empathetic relationality with each other. That's our craft evidence. The alternative, bring it here. The hidden cruel optimism argument here inherently remains the plan to utopia. The first step in our research process teaches us that the plan will never occur. Debaters don't believe their argument since the debate is not a referendum. It's a referendum on technical debating, not truth. Fairness notes that it causes psychological violence. Since debate is an anxiety-inducing competitive game. Now, extinction outweighs it causes maximum suffering and denies agency, includes fewer people too that drop the case. So every impact about inequality, impact war, etc. are 100. No temporal blackmail debate. If the fact that our impacts are fake and that we should debate about quote real issues, then they should indict the case. And the skills technical debate, no malproximity. There have been arguments about the expert ability of our policies on framework, which we have conceded about subject formation. But voting neck does not do anything. Improves its guilt persuasion among judges. Every single complacency where we feel speaking in small academic confines is enough. No egocentrism. The showing evidence is a critique of util. That's not the one you see. We can agree that utility need not be maximized while seeing extinction is still bad. We link to an empathy. The critique excludes consideration of real world harm from our advantage, which trains debaters to be solid topic and lapses into a purity politics that vaporizes discourse over pragmatic change. We say agree is good. The no detachment gate work evidence is 3 lines out of highlighted word solid. We don't celebrate death or treat it as a game. We propose solutions to combat it that link towards detachment. Debaters on desensitized to death, but fixated on challenging it's by refining state policy. They also link Coppell. It's also detached from the consequences of the critique. They only were in this debate to win the ballot and covert description of a profession to win the ballot. Now the other links are wrong. One, we don't force people to assimilate to the state. They can live as they wish simply with an extra $1,000 shopping the case. When it proves that Solomon equivalency is good. The yields hit the inflation link here is wrong. The economy's remain constrained, so it wouldn't increase. Also, the plan to tax finance. Is indoctrination link is wrong. Cross zero this. There's no reason why a basic income will cause them to come out of the closet. Then it doesn't force outing. The plan doesn't make it worse. The wrong link. This makes zero sense. Simply increasing education doesn't mean that we have to bathe in the state. Or greater education allows them to learn about flaws in the government. For the dirty link evidence makes no sense. It simply says the plan is effective.
And PFA proven.
8, starting now.
Did you say you were rejected? we stay top in linear order.
Who did the scan?
Ishan, can you get this scan?
Yeah. Wait, give me a sec. I'm good now.
Framework is a technical crush when they've conceded too much when our defense has dropped. Re-highlights with their own fiat good offense. All I need to do is win a 1% risk of a link plus framework for you to auto vote negative now. Ishan's winner might have sounded very technically precise, but he's dropped a lot of technical offensive framework debate that will win us on the framework flow first. I'll do the link debate at the top. Basic income classifies revolutionary resistance against the system by forcing them to be dependent on it and content with minor injustices they face. Either conceded coding or when you see cross-sects when they said they did not actually increase the state of life that current people were in, just change duplicate programs and pay the same amount of money, and same with IE companies putting rainbow logos while discriminating against them at workplaces proves that they just make the quarters more livable for career folk. The impact of square pacification that causes them to invest in systems that own death. Westwood uses queer trans folk as a part of a pornographic game where they get affective feeling and helping queer folk while simultaneously imagining the obliteration of the flesh. That's Feldman evidence. Remember the quoting of the Wong evidence. They said it's just education, but that education explicitly used against a criminal deviant career, which is when Wong says when weak governments fail to improve their people's lives, their legitimacy suffers, which is then forces them to go through nationalist curriculums and quote, their people get better educated to participate in institutions, and then it says weak states often engender terrorism and crime but that terrorism and crime is exactly what they frame queer people as, which is the dropped Robinson evidence, which causes mass incarceration of queer folk disproportionately despite not a higher crime rate. Now, the impact of serial policy failure turns case absent analyzing queer phobia is the recurring boss that formulates existential risk, liminal anxiety, makes all their impacts novel, results in things like victim blaming of queer folk, and results in resentment because queer people think it's their fault that all this violence is happening. Second, it's the Todd evidence that causes psychic burnout. They mishandled this, which will be more down below, but it's the only thing your ballot can resolve because it rejects the idea of pacification. I'll do more on that below. Now go down to the alternative. The alternative is clear what making it takes this room as a bastion of Ishan and Sahil's enforcement of normalcy and investment into death of queer and trans folk, and claims it as a space to create a sure rejection of heteronormativity, creates a rupture in business as usual by drawing attention to that which repeats normative tropes and creating career resentment and pacification within this space. Now the framework to be proper counter-interpretation. The one to see is an object society, they get away the benefits. The one to see scholarship with the negative should disprove the scholarship periods. Now look, the one to find it explaining impacts will offer drawing aims to links to our model. We cannot link to words, words, authors, or highlighted, but rather core themes that undergird advantages and solvency ground solves predictably because actual solves of it. Now I'm going for the spectator politics is that outweighs our offense because we have offense and defense and clashing fairness. Simulation politics via fiat turns the politics as spectator sport. That's the habitual evidence that exposition and energy agency onto the USHE and having faith they'll carry out the plan resigns individuals to passivity and instills a spectator mentality that detaches debaters from individual responsibility. Straight turn skills and advocacy impacts means debaters never have a will to act which undercurts their impact because their advocates never have a desire to use those skills. Now there's an external resentment impact that was cold dropped our inability to change the world and fundamental loss of subjective coherence manifests themselves in self-hatred, destroys their capacity to act and causes immense internal psychic loathing. Now it is game over when they've conceded re-highlights of their own fiat evidence extend the Dybvig highlights. One re-highlight shows that Dybvig agrees with the mutual evidence that fiat creates spectator politics that desensitizes debater or surveillance and resigns individuals to passivity and that detaches debaters from individual responsibility. Straight turns skills and advocacy impacts two turns and answers all their stuff about fiat creating social change activism because spectator mentality means debaters will never have a will to act because of the spectator mentality. They said fiat is pessimistic but we can use it for optimism. Literally listen to yourself. It's a double turn. They think fiat instills action. We think it creates mindless desensitized spectators. Hold the line. They said no spectator mentality, just normative judgment. Wrong. That was the overview. The answer to Ingram is irrelevant because we both agree that repetition shapes subjectivity. Hold the line. They themselves have said that over the course of the season they learn about stuff. They've been debating about state-based politics for the past 4 years and have used tropes such as the Wong evidence to prove legitimacy. Now Clash. They've dropped lots of defense for Clash offense as well as offense on Clash, which proves that we solve it better. Clash is also not content neutral. A risk that maximizing a Clash's straight turn and should not come at the expense of what type of Clash it is if their Clash is heteronormative rejected. Now they've dropped that. Their model justifies a case that utopian alternative structural critiques of extinction scenarios, which is much worse for Clash because teams can easily get through that. And they've also dropped that we only get to link to 8 seconds of advocacy lecture the whole 8 minutes which is worse for class season, both offensive reasons, which means it's offer their only impact better now. They that said we moved the one to see that was answered above by the 8 seconds 8 minutes. I think they have also linked to clash as well. Hidden expect process complex team going for unreasonable T violation. Literally the score improves even if it's resolution based. They are running to the margins now. The ontology debate I'll do it here. I don't need to win ontology since we're for winning fair, but I'm gonna do it here to seal the ballot. They functionally dropped the ontology debate. All they said was death is the only ontological state, but conceded that the queer body is overkilled, which means that it's shot after death, which means that queerness is a pathology that transcends humanness and to the point of gratuity, where even if it's dead, it still transcends the ontological state. Dropped absolving heteronormativity by letting heteronormativity off the hook here. Once again, performing the link by pacifying yourself in relation to queer violence. They said, pornotroping 2, no, it's not about debate suffering, it's about feeling that you're doing something for queer folk, which is all above now. Cooperative stuff to be causes exhaustion, but that is not to the level of the bloom evidence which says queer people experience it disproportionately. Now the extinction stuff, no. I'll go for the temporal blackmail state. I think it's terminal defense, and I'll go for the link, but it is a warrant for agency, and Harry Bell can only resolve our link argument. Extinction out of ways is irrelevant if we win framework. Yeah.
158 starting.
It's AFF and then the okay.
K framework up top.
I think so. Easy as solid winning framework and extinction of ways to avoid quick and upon war for global instability. Even if they win ontology, there are different textures of queerness, which is a dropped argument. A millionaire and someone in poverty will have drastically different lives, even if same progress. It's impossible for both. Extinction is the most terminal form of all violence. It causes mass suffering from radiation and it destroys agency of the subject, which outweighs in terms of impact. We did not drop that the queer body is overkilled. Winning extinction causes violence to them means that extinction is the worst form of overkill since it causes lasting radiation for decades. There's also zero explanation about how this interacts with any argument on extinction of waste. You should hold the line of the K. Pornography is zero risk. The play does not represent individual suffering, which is what their evidence describes. Rather, it lays out the political stakes of nuclear war. The link back to their evidence describes anti-queer violence, which is incredibly more detailed than our evidence. Suffering is also not voyeurism. Rather, it's a way to have empathetic rationality, which is other than the craft of evidence. Framework proper only value desirability of the plan that requires links to be unique and to the plan and the all competitive. The class weighs the process of fending up research scrutiny to someone who's trying their utmost hard to be. Who will improve the quality of whatever we hope to do in the future, whether we're drafting a bill in Congress, arguing a case in court, organizing protests, or navigating day-to-day challenges. Our ability to defend our position against criticism is an invaluable skill. As an external impact that only we access the NEG might create activists who can explain the benefits of their alternative, but only our interpretation creates a lifelong set of skills that lets debaters thrive in any future they wish to pursue. It also solves orphans in an anti-queer world. The agency will actually actualize things like queer utopic are ones who can persuade people to join things like queer movements and beat back skeptics. This is often their interpretation. Hinder solutions to things like anti-queer violence because debaters will flounder outside of it when faced with well-prepared opponents. We will concede subject information is true. Clash solves it over long term because we robustly defend our positions. Their interpretation destroys Clash. Is unpredictable and moves the debate from a defense of the plan to random prior questions that the NEG arbitrarily decides. It also forces us to be prepared against infinite representations. Attached for speech talks, authors, etc., which oversets the AFF research burden. There is no definition of core tenet of the 1EC, so it's infinitely regressive, them artificially limiting our interpretation to just plans, advantages, and solvency. Is the link arbitrariness and crushes the AFF's ability to engage. Now, conceding subject information makes it a crush for the affirmative. We conceded that the ballot does signal, but their model makes it much worse. We should try to export fiat debates. Now, Clash being content neutral is fine. They drop the Clash, solve the long term. Hello, now our arbitration does not exclude their scholarship, but raises the bar for all solvency, uniqueness, and specificity, which is better for their advocacy. And they can still critique a rat's Clash solves over the long term, empirically proven arguments like Mathos, and no case of the NEG usually be read for Clash over the long term. Change those positions. Now, they're taking tacky defense. After choice is not solved because it's not resolutionary based. The NEG chooses what the app gets to read. Now, utopian models are good as for fiat good, but they can exclude it on theory if they're bad. The async and plan next. It's supported by 8 minutes of consequences-based arguments with 1C, which they can still answer. Now, the Clash loss is not inevitable, even if people rush to the margins. That's irrelevant since that's all price sensitive is resolutionary based on Clash. Fiat is good. A1 is pragmatism, speculative imagination. Allows to test facts with hypotheses and draw connections to social theory. To cultivate practical application, that is the key internal link motivating students. That's Cooper. 2 is critical thinking. Criticism of policy making need not be restricted to the elite and apply to interscholastic debate, making us budding social critics through boosting cognitive flexibility and conditioning ourselves in the real world. That's we need to be advocacy, examining and understanding the blueprints of complex policy enables persuasive ability to rally movements and achieve social change through refinement and imagination. That viewing the speculative politics is zero risk. They've dropped every index to the Mitchell evidence. The fiat does not require belief in the state. It's just a normative judgment on whether the plan is good. That's key to all politics and agency. Good cost benefit analysis teaches us what to advocate for and train students to confront real world opposition to alternative. Sees the academy means we can never act outside of our social location. The evidence is about politics like forming a negative association with the word Republican fiat terms. It criticizes to say and repetitively trains us to oppose solutions to entrenched problems. They repeatedly perform the all without ever actualizing political transformation. Inherency demands the plan must be utopia. The immediate start of the research process teaches us the plan will never occur due to the inherency burden. That means nobody will get psychologically attached to any political proposal. That there's a fine line between optimism and pessimism. The McGee evidence is fantastic. It says that we all know that debate is just a game, that voting AFF cannot cause any change, but we can pessimistically act as budding social critics as a result of impact is nebulous, and not that evidence the defense above should apply. But ontology is wrong, and they've dropped 3 sub-points in the 1 AR. First is the Jones evidence. It's the single most specific part in this debate. It's the only study, and says that there are independent variables that are each consistent, that people can change their minds and perspectives, even if it's anti-queer violence is culturally entrenched. Burden they have to win, and that's impossible at 100% risk that is true. Otherwise, they create a pessimism trap which ensures permanent queer violence when it could be alternatively avoided. Now, there's all the empirics of CRA and general social exceptions prove that it's possible for queer futures to experience positive action by the state, even if it's rare. That means that the plan is an instance of contingent improvement for queer folk. Now, the best card they have is Kressler, who simply asserts that people are wired to be violent with zero warrant for why that's so, and only we have a study that says so, and they drop all of these other words. Now, the link they went for fucking sucks and makes zero sense. How does it basic income pacify movements? How does it make people feel content with $1,000? There's still other social work affecting that's left to be done. It's totally illogical, and you cannot explain to me in the post round but solving inequality makes movements possible by giving social movements income when they're fighting against the state. Now, the wrong link is even worse. There's a reason. But there's no link to go back above. We don't think protecting the state is good. Just as the words USD and increased fiscal redistribution are very valuable.
Good debate.
Good debate.
When that.
I can go grab him.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just let me know
Can you
that.
just tell Coppell to come in?
Oh, yeah.
I just said like if they're doing a card doc.
That's so messed up if stuff's like.
I've contributed to the problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've started with one.
Alright, thank you.
Okay. After doc is also signed.
close are you all to being in?
I'm already done.
I'm still typing.
Okay.
I
Do you have enough time? Do you want to waddle out before you're in?
Oh yeah.
Okay, works.
do influence.
Yeah, I try to get a little.
There's a fountain right there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you want to though, you have time to like.
What?
I just got like probably 2 more spots. Prepare for this.
Pardon me. I was so smart.
Oh wow, yeah, you more than half me in the judge race. I was 13. Appreciate everything.
Yeah, I would like that.
I nearly got it again.
Basically from last night. What's the point you're trying to say? I'm trying to point to a college that I think is smart. Don't do that in my bed, that's right. Yeah. It's just it's a little old. It's not even it's a little old. It's not a school I have to bring my culture. It's just that's yeah. That's right, but I think it ends up making the same argument. Yeah, I think we can just make it as an analytic. Exactly.
Okay, we're in. Is everyone here? Congratulations to both teams for making it to the Octa finals of the TFA state tournament. The decision is a 2-1 for the affirmative. So I sat, I voted negative on the critique. I ended up buying a pretty high risk of the link. I think the indicts of the lung evidence aren't responded to sufficiently in the 2AR. I end up buying that the affirmative endorses a harmful form of naturalization via notions of rule of law that reflect a harmful form of futurity. The affirmative possible out for me is the extinction outweigh stuff, which admittedly was not thoroughly responded to in the 2NR, apart from framework means it doesn't matter, so I end up looking there. From the affirmative, the only impact is clash. I looked at the 1AC McGee evidence and I actually think it's fairly good, and I think it does make the nuance argument that you all are talking about in terms of not having to be optimistic about state progress generally to like get value out of policy debates. I think there are a few problems here, however, that given the card seems to, at least to me, argue that ultimately policy-centered debates are a necessary prerequisite to effectuate political change down the line. I end up thinking there are problems related to that idea of ultimate political change and how the affirmative research project tries to, ultimately reach it. First, the serial policy failure from the Wong link I don't think is sufficiently responded to in the 1AR or the 2AR, and the 2AR has just enough of an argument here about why political changes like the AFF operate based on a liminal anxiety about queerness that ultimately reproduce bad policies. Now, is this an argument that is a complete slam dunk in terms of negating your offense? Not quite. But I think the lack of contestation here means I start out generally more skeptical about the benefits of your class in the AFF research project. Second, the psychic burnout argument via the Todd evidence, I don't think it's effectively responded to either in the 2AR. I think the belief in political hope and futurity leads to psychological exhaustion for queer folk, and the 2AR makes the argument that that's a tangible impact that my ballot can resolve. The best mitigation for the AFF here is that the negative also potentially believes in hope. I just don't think this argument is enough to mitigate the risk of this impact, when the Todd evidence to me seems to be more about political hope, and rather than just like hope just in general, right? Third, the recutting of some of the 1AC fiat good cards also isn't, is also something that influenced my decision. I think there are some warrants in the re-highlightings that argue that, quote, research processes can alter opinions, and discovering new information can help question assumptions. I think those are reasons why I end up thinking the ballot has a better chance of accessing the negative impacts rather than your impacts, because the negative framework interpretation is inviting us to interrogate epistemologies of the AFF rather than just the 8-second plan text, right? I don't think the AFF is winning enough of a risk that political change is possible on the ontology debate to make me comfortable evaluating that as offense against the turns. The 2AR is too warrant/example light here, and I think that both speeches don't really sufficiently answer the gratuitous response arguments from the negative. It's still an excellent debate, though.
I think I can. Okay, cool. I want to echo what Jack said. Stupendously good debate. This was fun. I vote affirmative. I think the plan definitely solves the end-impact war, and there's also definitely a link argument. Nobody has great internal link to start working to the other side's offense, which means the things I have to think about are impact factors and framework. There is this like 2NR like link turns case argument, which is this serial policy failure thing Jack mentioned. I do not understand why this like turns the AFF. Like I understand the argument that it is like it means that sort of like the AFF cannot solve the link argument, but I think that like parts of how I evaluate the ontology debate sort of implicate this, which I'll get to in a minute. But like broadly speaking, I do not know why this means that UBI would not solve income inequality and specifically modeled by India would solve the impact scenario. So I don't think this link argument actually like, turns the case. I could not explain to you why that's the case. So I don't think either side has big internal link to either's offense. Evaluating sort of both the impact factors and framework question requires me to sort of resolve this ontology thing, which I just think Westwood is a bit ahead on. The Jones evidence seems to indicate opinions about queer and trans people are malleable and shaped by a variety of things, media, sort of sociocultural things, upbringing, education, and those opinions can be changed. Even if like violence against like queer and trans people is socially ingrained, which like I don't think anyone has said it's not sort of structured by a unified framework of sort of desire for overkill, the way the negative would say is the case. I think the 2AR is correct, like this sort of like I think Kressler evidence just like is like not particularly sort of good in this question, does not really warrant the conclusion the negative's drawing. And I also don't really like know why this sort of like I also just like do not think this overkill argument, like even if technically mishandled by the 1AR, is like impacted enough in the 2NR from the comfortable sitting on it. I do not know why the sort of gratuity of like certain hate crimes means that Coppell is structurally correct about queerness. Especially when this is, if I am being generous, like no more than 10 seconds of the 2NR. I'm unsure what the terminal to the impact to the negative link argument is that outweighs the AFF, especially when I think the large portions of the link often implications, i.e. this like sort of policy stuff relies on winning ontology. I think the framework debate, I also conclude affirmative. I think that the negative's defense to like AFF stuff is like weird. The 2AR is correct in that I am just like I'm completely unsure what the difference between like core theme versus just like scholastic means broadly is. The negative answer to this, in my opinion, should just be that the negative model allows debates over this, which checks the impact. Like even if the negative is the one of scholarship, the AFF can still make a linked defense argument about how certain scholarship doesn't outweigh the other good parts of the AFF. Like I think it is easy to like intuitively say like the realism bad link negates the AFF more than you said the before USFG. Even if the negative can theoretically both win off those, like the AFF can win link defense easily one of those, but the negative model allows for debates over that, which like solves the impact of this like arbitrariness, like infinite regress thing. I think like that's the argument that like we always made at UH to answer this argument. But regardless,
So like that's what I think the two. But as it stands, like I'm unsure sort of what this is, and I think there's a large risk of like negative sort of model making the stasis for affirmative sort of step unpredictable. The clash bad argument begs the question of ontology, which I already sort of explained how I resolved above. I think that there's a high risk that sort of a model debate that iteratively refines sort of like fiat proposals over time is good, even if like it doesn't. I think that there's like some risk that requires us to invest in the state, but broadly speaking, the external impact here is sort of the advocacy skills outweighs. The specific parts of the debate that I sort of do like think of hardest about come close to a negative on is like one, the div big recuts, and two, Mitchell. I think the impact of the Mitchell evidence is like underexplained, and the 1AR sort of like has conceded link defense to it. I also think that these div big recuts are like not as hot as Coppell seems to think they are. The like first one is just like div big, like I read the card, I don't really think this is like div big saying like Mitchell's totally right. I think this is just div big saying like Gordon said this stuff back in like 98, but I think like the rest of the evidence and also the McGee stuff probably pretty like conclusively like indicates that there is sort of some value to these things, and I don't really know why that's not true. And in terms of the other part of the card, which is just like debate doesn't impact subjectivity, I think that like I don't really know why that matters in the context of this. I think there's winning that the impact it has on subjectivity is good. And I don't think the 2.5 spends enough time on the Mitchell stuff for me to think that this sort of outweighs the magnitude of Westwood's like clash impact because of the sort of just like impact of those skills broadly. When I see evidence just seems to pretty conclusively indicate that predictable policy debates produce the advocacy skills, which is the biggest impact, and one has the very important debate for me. Given no framework and no ontology, I think the negative answers to extinction outweighs just like sort of implode immediately because this temporal blackmail stuff assumes you're winning like one framework and two like the ontology, which like I do not think you're winning sort of either question on. So I think that just like risk of AFF offense just like outweighs because like of this sort of textures of violence argument that is like short but like sufficiently extended by the 1AR 2AR. Yeah.
I agree with both Patrick and Jack. I think that Jack probably wrote the ballot that would come closest to me voting negative. I think a lot about like the serial policy failure stuff, but like Patrick, I concluded that it does not have enough time spent on it. I think that the concession of case and just not extending defense in the block is kind of a mistake because it allows for them to go for this extinction outweighs argument. It's the worst form of overkill, which means that like it only makes this debate a question of framework. I think that the re-highlights are they're good, they're not fantastic. I think that the 1AC evidence is just substantially better on sort of the question of debating over fiated policies over the course of the season having like effects. I also think that Westwood has this like very good argument about just like we don't need to be we don't need to think that the state is ethical or good or like be particularly invested in it. It is the process of researching and debating over those outcomes over the course of a season that is good. I think a lot of y'all's argument is just like, you make detached spectators. But I think that their evidence, and I wish y'all would have made like a more explicit push on this, that like that detachment, that form of detached reasoning is something that is good per McGee evidence from everybody from a policymaker to somebody like a mom of six, because we can sit at a table and like rationally look at the policy choices in front of us, like, whether or not to go vote for Joe Biden or something like that. Because if that's worse than Trump, then like, sure. I don't know. In terms of technical minutia, I think everything that I would say has been said. I don't know. I don't think that the link hard enough is alone to get me. The link hard alone is sufficient to get me to believe that the app is bad and doesn't solve like sort of contingent forms of harm. I don't know that their model sort of like locks in these sort of serial policy failure things. I don't know. I think the detachment stuff is good. I guess questions.
I want to add like two things really quickly that I like meant to mention but forgot to because they weren't like moving parts of my decision. The 2AR should spend more time in extending this like dropped indict of like the alternative that's like very short in the 1AR, but like there because this zeroes the risk of negative solving any of their offense, and the fact that this was not like the top of the 2AR annoys me. The second is I think that part of the reason I literally wrote in my ballot like I anticipate that if this is a 2-1, part of the split will be because I don't think the 2AR or 2NR are doing particularly great work doing explicit evidence comparison at the level of like the framework debating. I think debating a lot more through these like sort of like, comparing like the McGee and like sort of big recuts and Mitchell stuff in the 2NR, 2AR, like could very easily have made this a 3-0 for Westwood or like a 2-1 or 3-0 for Coppell, with just like some more comparative work invested. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that really quick.
I fully agree with that. I had a quick little comment for two comments for y'all. 2AC Crossix, when they ask you about like I think maybe a more way to offensively use these like contingency arguments beyond just like when they ask you like how's that offense for you, it's like, oh, it's not really, it's just kind of like an indict to your theory, right? Maybe a more way to offensively use that I thought about was like you could say it turns back their futurity link arguments, because like you could say that it's also a reason that if they win, you're an instance of futurity. That's actually a good thing if you win, because that futurity allows us to like realize contingent moments of progress and make the world a better place, right? In the 1AR, I think that like I just wrote here that I thought you were a little bit your technical execution was pretty good, but I think like you're a smidge too warrant light on the ontology and fiat good arguments. So I think just like drawing some more specific examples and warrants from your evidence, I think would help you here, especially when the 1NR, you know, in response to the 1NR re-highlighting stuff as well, right? I agree with what Patrick said about like I think that this debate was so close, especially because of like it was a product of like you all are excellent debaters,
Yes,
but also
this was
a product of like I think that there's like an opportunity for one team to be the one doing the most evidentiary comparison. So I think that that's somewhere where either team can come more in.
Yeah, I think this is kind of where like the case page and the framework page and the evidence, like the not having those sorts of like just case defense cards, like here is why a UBI fails, and sort of reproduces the problem that our evidence indicates. I like just give me policy reasons why that's the case, and I think like I'm more than willing to buy the sorts of like framework push that y'all are making.
Yeah, like to be clear, I think this Indian modeling scenario is like dog shit, right? Like 30 seconds on this in the 1NR, and I think the risk of disadvantage is like 2%, right? Like, just an allocation.
I don't even need that. I just need UBI bad. Like
Yeah, that's
there's
fair,
some
yeah.
policy reasons why UBI does
Yeah.
not do the things that they
Yeah.
claim, like in the context of like poor communities.
Yeah.
Like that probably decks the India model. Like even if India does model, who cares? Like it doesn't work.
Questions?
1AR, 2AR both drop absolving heteronormativity. How would you evaluate that?
Oh, I just like don't understand like how the implication of this argument is true if they're winning any like I just like the absolving heteronormativity. This is like the riffing on the Sexton A card for like AFF, where it's like elevating the maximum captivity artificially is good. I like this is like barely warranted out in like the 2NC and like 2NR. It is like a half second. I'm like pretty uncomfortable sitting on this, especially when again I think the problem with this argument is like it begs the question of whether or not you were winning a broader sort of psychoanalytic type argument about like what like the reason this works with AFRPS is like Sexton is assuming there is a sort of psychic investment by like non-black people in like black suffering, which means that they are inclined to disinvest from that. If I do not think you are winning that argument, I don't really know like why this is true or what the implication to this is, right? Like in the context of this debate, because like I think so like my answer to this is just like I think the Jones stuff, like in my mind, like I cannot give like this is where I said it's like the 2NR needs to be impacting on arguments a lot more in terms of like resolving things and doing evidence comparison, because as it stands, it's just like I cannot like square the circle of like this argument is like true in a world where like this Jones evidence is like not answered by the 2NR, right? Absent substantially more higher time investment from the negative, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. The 1AR drops like all of the clash standards. I'm wondering like why that didn't matter in the end.
Are you talking about like the internal link defense stuff?
Yeah, the clash.
Yeah, so two arguments that I think the 2NR has. The first is like for me, this like impact turn to like clash argument, right? I think I explained my RFQ like why if NEG not winning ontology, don't think this is like it has an impact, right? Think AFF offense outweighs. The second is like don't really think that 2NR like gets this down to zero. Think that affirmative is winning that negative model is net more unpredictable because like core thing is just like I don't understand the distinction between a core theme of the AF versus like, you know, like a arbitrary sort of research commitment or like single sort of representation, right? That is never explained to me, and like that is an argument that I have in the 1AR, right? So in my mind, like negative offense, like even if like there's certainly some defense here, right? And so it's tough, but like 2NR does not spend enough time where I think like the risk of their internal link is low enough that I think they don't get it. Like I think like even if there is some basis for like the AF to say something under the negative model, I think that the negative model is net substantially more unpredictable and sort of harder to be AF under, right? Which is enough to trigger the internal link to their impact, right? For this research. Does that make sense for all?
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's just like the 2NR in this debate, and like the 2AR also has this problem, I feel like, and I think like this is part of where like us and Jack split is like 2NR and 2AR in this debate are like very blippy and like sort of warrant height, like and also like not implicating our arguments super aggressively, right? Like there's a lack of sort of judge instruction in terms of how I should resolve these sort of competing internal links and things in the 2NR and 2AR.
This isn't an answer to your question, but it's something that I wrote in my feedback. I think y'all are mistaking telling me where you're gonna do things as judge instruction when it's like just package the arguments and then do them in a sequence and then like just say on like now the whatever debate and trust us to flow it that way rather than like the whole like blah 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 blah, I'm gonna do that here, blah 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 blah, I'm gonna do that here, blah 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 blah, I'm gonna do that here. Like I clocked like almost like a whole 45 seconds of one of y'all's speeches that was just in the block that was telling me where to go and where you were gonna do stuff. I don't need you to tell me to do that. Just like do the work instead, right? Don't tell me where you're gonna do it. Do it. And that'll save you a lot of time. It makes the debate, like, there were so many times where I started flowing something that was just like backspace, 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 because I realized I was flowing you saying, like, you're referencing an argument, but then I'm gonna do that later. And that was like a couple of times. And like, if I missed something, it was because I was fixing that mistake. So just like, work on the way that you're, especially in like the block, you should work on the way that you're packaging these things, so it's like, the futurity stuff. Line by line defense, move on. Next thing. You don't need to tell me where you're gonna do it, just like, do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So, like, the first part where you said, like, judge instructions and not saying where you're gonna do it, like, how should I bridge judge instructions?
I think like your road mapping and then signposting between flows should do that. So like an example of this is like the such and such link is here, I'll do that work below, right? That's broadly fine if you do that a couple of times, because like you're kind of directing me like this is here on your flow, but think about like you're gonna be thinking about it here. I think y'all's problem is like too much of that, right? And instead just sort of trust us to be able to like follow, and then also trust yourselves in the two and R to sort of like make those contextualizations happen, right? I think the problem is like specifically in the block, you are not sort of like just getting these the warranting for these arguments out sufficiently to sort of like win the broader psychoanalytic claims that the negative that you were trying to defend.
I had a question about like the mutual like fiat good stuff. What do you think about the argument that like AFF offense is like fiat is good because it creates like advocacy skills and like inspires you to do social change, but then the Mitchell evidence turns that by saying like constantly being a spectator, no one ever actually wants to use those skills. How do you evaluate that term?
I just think the two errors just winning is not true. Like the two errors just winning that like the McGee card and like stuff is saying that like policy sort of predictable sort of policy focused research gives you the skills and the impetus to sort of go and make social change outside of debate. It does not force you to invest in those things. I also think the 1AR and 2AR are right in that it's just like there's an United evidence. It's just like doesn't require investing sort of in those things, but also like the card is like not great and is just kind of name checking like partisanship really, and not really actually like indicting the idea of like lobbying or like activism, right? Okay. I truly like shudder, and pray for the world that I'm saying this, but like I actually think the better card in the 1R on framework is Antonio 95, which is like truly a horrifying thing to be saying out loud in 2024. But like I think that is actually the better 2NR framework push, because this Mitchell card is just like not great, and I think the 1AR just like is much better prepared to this. I think a better way to do it is not like try and like it's just like use the resonance concept, like execute an internal link term for like advocacy skills. It's like the advocates they create are like resentment laden. They can't create effective change. They might end up being racist because of resentment reasons, right? Like that is probably like the smarter argument than just like if you debate about policy, you will think that is good enough, and then you will not do things. Spectator sport, and it's like I don't know. I think they have like pretty good evidence to the contrary on that question. You always want to like go for because the way you want to think about it is it's like Mitchell is just like a straight turn to their offense, but there's no external impact to it, right? So it's like the problem with this is like it's like if the average in econ advantage, you don't want to read the econ dissent, but you want turns econ for whatever dissent you do go for. You want the same thing here. It's like you want like an external impact to your framework stuff, which Antonio 95 gets you with like the resentment shit, but you also really want turns like their offense, right? Turns case if we're speaking about it like a dissent, right? Does that make sense? So again, like truly a horrifying thing to be saying out loud, but like Antonio 95 was like kind of the move here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Westwood?
For us, I guess, you mentioned that you thought that like you agreed with the NEG claim that like fiat does cause some investment in political hope, optimism, and futurity. I guess like why? But you also mentioned that you thought the McGee evidence was like good on the question of fiat being pessimistic and utopian. Like why? What was the reason?
Oh, I don't necessarily think that like the McGee stuff. I don't necessarily think that I am super like jiving with this argument about like fiat is pessimistic. The thing I find really good from McGee is just the stuff that's just like the even if part. That's like even if you like don't, but like these skills are valuable no matter what. Like I don't think like I think they're correct. It's just like policy-focused debates like probably coax some investment into like policy bureaucratic frameworks, right? If those are all the cards you cut, you will learn to think that way. Like you will inevitably internalize this. I think this is just like kind of a truism. I think you just gotta win just like the external impact of just that is good, and that's why it's like I think like the in my mind like the better way to articulate this is just like treat it like a NEG framework argument, right? Just be like content is sort of not super relevant. Policy focused research is good, not because policy is good, but because it's inevitably super detail oriented and very technical and like a very predictable, clear stasis point. And those sort of debates produce skills that have an external impact. That is what I think like the sort of 2 ARs I had on the question like fiat is good. It's just like I think that produces good skills. I also think that the 1 AR, 2 AR should just be like more gung ho of just like if we have straight terms like the ontology stuff and one that like reforms, liberalism, these are good and redeemable, we have straight turn the impact of this argument. So like we will win that policy focused debates are good even if they cause you to invest in the state because the state racks, right? Which is like what I think the 1 AR, 2 AR, like the 2AC, 1 AR, 2 AR should all be very gung ho about this. Like, you know, they say no, you say yes, right? Always.
Y'all should have been way more explicit about the detachment being good because like that is like a skill being able to sort of like especially like for people like for people immediately affected by policies, it is good to be able to sort of like y'all's our core argument should just be like, yeah, it's good to be able to take a step back and like not get caught up in sort of like the effective rhetoric because that like causes you to go down unproductive rabbit holes and like locks you into sort of like can lock you into pessimism traps, which is an argument that y'all make, but I think more explicitly connecting it to like detachment and the skill of like doing that detailed, like ticky-tacky analysis stuff, like prevents sort of like falling down these unproductive rabbit holes and like locking people into cycles of oppression.
Yeah. And that way the link differential becomes like their model of debate. It's not just like this predictability and not just that like there's no clash, but rather that like the sort of nature of those debates, like debates about broad scholastic theories are inevitably like less detail focused, like they are less narrow. Like the value of like plans in policy-focused debate, fundamentally in my mind, just and like I think this is like a bit of a truism, but also just like but like doesn't really matter how you value this debate. But like I think the best argument in like AFF toolbox for these debates is always just like plan-focused debates are inevitably extremely narrow and extremely deep, right? And that is better than like broad structural debates about like, you know, without like really actionable proposals, right? And like I think that's the differential. So at that point it doesn't become just like we have nothing to say and like, you know, stuff is inevitable. It becomes like the debates themselves are structurally different in ways that like sort of change the skills garnered from them.
Y'all's framework makes this argument already. I think you should also be like you should punish the decision not to read case defense here as well.
Yeah.
Because like not just like they don't read a specific link, but also like they didn't contest like claims of like plan sort of solvency with like specific policy reasons that this
As a side note, the negative framework argument in my mind that y'all should be making, and in my mind the more compelling sort of K framework argument in general, is like the inverse of this. Like you want to go for just like contingency debates bad, like structuralism good, right? Like I think like shotgunning a bunch of fiat case is like okay, and like certainly like makes the 1 AR hard. But like a much more sort of structurally sound way to approach framework debating, because like this is like kind of my gripe with how y'all did the framework stuff yesterday, like too, is like the better framework arguments for big Ks like this is always just like, if we win our thesis argument, that means that violence power problems are structural and focusing on contingent solutions actively trades off with like a structural error. So think about it like, you know, in the context of like AFRICAS, like this is like why Wolfson is like descriptions are better than prescriptions, right? He's like, we need clarifying analytics, not sort of like solutions within humanist frameworks, right? Like, you want to like take the same approach and then we go the opposite direction, being like debates about narrow solutions trades off directly with structural theorizing. Those debates are better and more ethically important than like ticky-tacky tinkering, right?
One last note for Westwood, I want to amen, but like I think you all are a little bit too timid on the like institutions, like political change, good stuff. I think you spend too much time, I think, like trying to be like, oh, we're not saying that, like, you know, thinking that things are gonna happen. I think like just investing a lot more time in like, yes, we think that political change is possible, and like that's the only like and like reasons why that's good. I think that if you had pushed that much more, I think that would have like given me a lot more to think about before voting for Coppell.
And I don't think that this trades off with your ability to do that. We are not sort of like attached to the state, right? Like it is research about those things is good, and it is about seizing power.
Like the way to think about it, because like it seems like teams are very timid to say this because they're afraid of linking, but the way to think about it is like you can say no link and impact turn at the same time. Like no link, our model does not require you to invest in the state, but if it does, that's good because the state is awesome. I love America.
That goes
I love liberalism.
that goes,
I'm voting for Biden.
that goes back to the like comment I said earlier about the like how you can offensively use the contingency argument to be like it also operates as like if they win a link to that we're futurity, that's actually a reason why futurity is good.
The last thing I'll say is like this is kind of I think a thing about the 2AC that like bugs me that like a lot of teams do that like the other Westwood team I judged against Coppell yesterday, I gave them the same advice, is like 2AC needs to just like talk about the AFF more in the context of like their internal links, right? Like I kind of don't care about queer theory answer number 7 compared to like a really good card that is just like economics is good and progressively redeemable and like technical engagement is key and like reducing it to one structural thing is silly because income inequality is a very complex multifaceted issue and that's why policies like UBIs are good. More like sort of link turny type arguments in the 2AC, more like sort of technical engagement because like it puts Coppell on their back foot because like obviously like I think they're gonna the way you think about it is like they will always have more experience than you answering the queer theory answers. They will have substantially less experience than you like debating UBI good bad through the lens of like structural arguments about why economics as a discipline is good and stuff like that, right? So it's like less about the K, but like make the debate less about the critique and more about the F. Is kind of like I think a big part of like why this is because like and I think that ties into that thing I was saying about like being more gung ho. It's just like we think the plan is like the greatest idea in the history of the universe, and it alone is good enough to justify the entire existence of the U.S. government, right?
Especially when case defense is
Yes.
conceded. Like that was kind of like core of my decision.
Yes.
It's just like case defense conceded means that like AFF kind of gets to do everything. Like by and large, I just have to answer a couple of framework questions.
The framework interpretation you were talking about with like structural instead of contingency, how should like the inter be phrased, I guess?
The interpretation is fine. Like the object of research stuff. Like this is what like when we went for like cybernetics all last year. Like we went for the same. We just read like AFF is an object of research. Negative gets to a joint scholarship. And then like our answer to this like arbitrariness thing was like you can obviously make link defense arguments and just win that there's not an impact to the link. But if we win a sufficiently large link, it proves that our shit is relevant, right? Like obviously like link debating checks this. But the way you should frame the internal link to it is like policy-focused debates are bad because they parametricize sort of like, like the way you should think about it is like, policy-focused debates are like far too solution-focused and not sufficiently focused at like sort of problematizing, right? And sort of thinking structurally about like the causes of like issues, right? They trade off with each other because there's inevitably a ton of presuppositions that go into the empiricism good, positivism good, is like a bunch of assumptions about rational economic theory that might not be accurate and might actually be the cause of the problems that the 1AC isolates, which means that like beginning with the plan instead of ending with it, right, sort of like directly trades off with a structural understanding of why problems are happening, right? So it's like, obviously like if, we win realism is not true against a hedge F, that implicates whether or not hedge is good or bad. But their model would exclude the negative from saying that because that is a scholarship question and not a question of the outcome of the plan. Obviously that is silly because if the reason that they say the plan is good is wrong, then that means that like the plan being good is not true, right? So it's like this weird circle thing where it's like our impacts are good, our scholarship is good because the plan is right, and the plan is right because our scholarship is good, right? Which means that like a model of debate that forces one of those things to come first, or rather inverse relation between the two is good. And then you can also like, it straight turns all their offense about like problem solving and like research. And then you can also have this external impact about like, that's the only way to have debates about things like ethics, which are important to probably, like you should probably care about that.
There's some cards people used to read a few years ago that were like problem solution paradigms.
The SoCal, USC, Julian and Kevin read these cards that were like, instead of like problem solving, we should adopt problem posing. And like, those cards in particular you probably don't want to read because those cards are like super like IR security studies focused, not really good, but like
the
that
idea,
yeah.
You should write it in your blocks.
Yeah.
For like the top of 2 and C.
Do you know what the author for that card was?
It's Jones?
Jackson 15.
Johnson, is that it?
Jackson 15.
Jackson, yeah.
Jackson.
It's like the stuff they read versus like Northwestern
You
and like
can find it on
Warriors.
the USC wiki.
Michigan PR also went for this K. It was the security studies K. Octas of I think Northwestern or Kentucky. Check their wiki.
Michigan
Geo-
PR which year?
Alliances. It was the security studies case, so that part is still about IR. It's Jackson 15.
Yeah.
It's the first part of the framework.
Like the cards for this are good, and like to be clear, there are cards about this sort of thing. Like structurally, it's just like you need a reason. It like the entirety of the 1NR and like 2NC is just like fiat bad. I do not have an offensive reason why like debates about structural scholarship questions are better than debates about plans, right? It is just this debate is entirely a link turn debate, and like I said, it's like the problem just becomes like. You never want to read the econ dissat against the econ F, but you want a dissat that turns econ, right? So you want an external impact that turns theirs, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that way, if you win this big external ethics thing about like structuralism, then you can go for the arguments that you're trying to go for, which are like skills they generate are used in fucked up evil ways. If we win, like ethics is a prior question to how those are deployed. We control uniqueness on this, right? Does that make sense? Right? That's the better way to like frame these sort of like internal arguments, right?
Yeah.
Clash might be good, but the telos of that clash.
Yeah, right. Like just the classic argument, right? It's just like It's just like It is inevitable that debate produces skills, but if we win, that like the status quo model of debate that they propose like has unethical tenets as its foundation, then those skills will only be used to do fucked up racist shit, right? As opposed to our model, which makes the ethics of how we research a first order question instead of a second.
Ishan emailed y'all like.
Yeah, I sent them the PR doc.
What a nice guy. What a nice guy. You've come a long way. I'm proud of you.
Good luck, Westwood.
Yeah.
Good
Any other
job,
questions, Mel?
No.
Cool. And if you have any other questions, shoot me an email.
Yeah.
Don't forget your iPad.
You know on the other side of research. Is that decision not out?
I don't think so.
I can absolutely, in 2024, I mentioned in my RFP that the 2 should have gone for Antonio 95. I feel sick to my stomach.
Well, you know what?
Physically ill.
Sorry. I spoke to your existence as a record card.
God damn it, you son of a bitch.
You should say it. Okay. Yeah.
Do you know who won below this?
Below.
What was the fight?
I'm not
He
sure.
said there was no neg balance, so.
Well, actually, okay.
Yeah.
I will call Austin.
Did the Boyar say there was no neck balance?
No, he told
Posture?
us. And for who? The law.
No, it's supposed to be. You trying to do anything? Okay,
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Ishan, I'll send you the recording.